Hello and welcome back to Rizcast. Or should I say Rizcast? No, I shan't. I'm sorry. My free will got away from me. Okay. So today we're going to be reading the Raven Cycle, as you already probably know, because that's probably in the title or the thumbnail. And also because that's what we do here. We talk about the Raven Cycle. And being a little bit in love with all of your friends. Last we left off. Do I need to recap that much? Last we left off, we just finished chapter 25. 25! And we now know. Well, I'm just gonna say, the last bits. The trees speak Latin. Call it by name, Cabe's water. The trees, they speak Latin, and they're called Cabe's water. Are you so prepared emotionally and mentally for the inevitability of life and death? Why did I say it like that? Okay, I'm pumped. It's picking up. Do you feel that it's picking up? We're 40% left to go, and we're going to get through 20%, which means I don't know where we're going to end up stopping at, and if I end up making this into like a 4 or 5 hour thing because I actually don't want to end, don't come at me, bro, okay? Just give me heart with hands emojis, the hand heart emojis, where they do the hands and they do the heart. I didn't need to explain that. Everyone knows what I'm saying. It's there. You can see it. Okay. Oh my god. Okay, I need to stop stalling. I'm just feeling emotions about this. Are you feeling... Do you ever want to talk about your emotions, Tian? I do. I know, David. I'm sad. I know, David. Okay. We're gonna read now. Chapter 26. Are you prepared? I'm prepared. Chapter 26. I'm prepared. Chapter 26. Cabe's water, Gansey repeated. There was something about the word itself that was magical. Cabe's water. Something old and enigmatic. A word that didn't seem to belong in the New World. Gansey read the Latin on the rock again. The translation seemed obvious once Ronan had done the heavy lifting. And then, like the others, he looked around at the surrounding trees. What is this thing you've done? He asked himself. Where have you brought them? I vote we find water, Blue said. To make the energy do whatever Ronan said it would do, that was better. And then I think we should say something in Latin. It sounds like a plan, Gansey agreed, wondering at the strangeness of this place, that such a nonsensical suggestion should seem so practical. Should we go back the way we came or go farther in? Noah said, farther. Since Noah rarely expressed an opinion, his word reigned. Setting off again, they doubled back and forth across their own trail in search of water, and as they walked, the leaves fell around them, red and then brown and then gray, until the trees were naked. Frost appeared in the shadows. Winter, Adam said. It was impossible, of course, but again, so was everything that had come before it. Sorry, did I make that obvious that I said winter? I say winter, but... And I didn't know how Adam would sound in that moment. Me when I'm doing voices, sorry. Winter, Adam said. It was impossible, of course, but again, so was everything that had come before it. It was, Gansey thought, like when he'd driven through the Lake District with Mallory. After a while, there had been so much incredible beauty for him to process, and it had become invisible. It was impossible that it was winter. But it was no more impossible than anything else that had happened. They had come to a stand of naked willow trees on a gentle slope, and below them was the twist of a slow-moving, shallow creek. Mallory had once told Gansey that where there were willows, there was water. Willows propagated, he said, by dropping seeds into moving water that then carried them downstream, allowing them to root on some distant shore. And, Blue added, there's water. Gansey turned to the others. Their breath came in clouds, and they all looked badly underdressed. Even the color of their skin looked wrong, too sun-flushed for this colorless winter air. Tourists from another season. He became aware that he was shivering, but he didn't know if it was from the newly winter cold or from anticipation. Okay, he said, Blue. What did he want to say in Latin? Blue turned to Ronan. Can he just say hello? That's polite. Ronan looked pained. Polite was not his style. but he said, salve. To Blue, he said, that actually means be well. Super job, she replied. Ask if they'll speak with us. Now Ronan looked even more pained because this made him look ridiculous, and that was even less his style, but he tilted his head back to the treetops and said, Locere to nobis. I didn't translate that. I didn't put that in my notes on this, on what the translation is, like I've been doing for the ad note on iBooks, but I'm assuming that he just said, will you speak with us? So, Locere to nobis? They all stood quietly. A hiss seemed to be rising, as if a faint winter breeze rustled the leaves in the air, in the leaves in the trees. But there were no leaves left on the branches to rustle. Nothing, Ronan replied. What did you expect? Quiet, ordered Gansey, because now the hissing was definitely more than a rustle. Now it had resolved into what sounded distinctly like whispered, dry voices. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Everyone but Noah shook their heads. I do, said Noah, to Gansey's relief. Gansey said, ask them to say it again. Ronan did. The hissing rustle came again, and now it seemed obvious that it was a voice, obvious that it had never been leaves. Plainly, Gansey heard a crackly statement in Latin. He wished, suddenly, that he'd studied harder in class as he repeated the words phonetically to Ronan. They say they've been speaking to you already, but you haven't been listening, Ronan said. He rubbed the back of his shaved head. Gansey, are you messing with me? Do you really hear something? Do you think Gansey's Latin is that good? Adam replied tersely. It was your handwriting on the rock, Ronan. They said they spoke Latin. Shut up. I just love that. The trees hissed again, and Gansey repeated them to Ronan. Noah corrected one of the verbs Gansey had misheard. Ronan's eyes darted to Blue. They said that they're happy to see the psychic's daughter. Me! Blue cried. The trees hissed a reply, and Gansey repeated the words. I don't know what that means, Ronan said. They're also happy to once more to see... I don't know what that word is. Grey Warren? If it's Latin, I don't know it. Ronan, whispered the trees. Ronan Lynch. It's you, Gansey said with wonder, his skin creeping. Ronan Lynch, they said your name. It's you they're happy to see again. Ronan's expression was guarded, his feelings hidden. Again. Blue pressed her hands to her cold red cheeks, her eyes wide, her face holding all the awe and excitement that Gansey felt. Amazing. The trees? Amazing. Adam asked, why can only you and Noah hear them? In stumbling Latin, even in class, he rarely spoke it, and it was strange to try to translate his thoughts from words he could see written in his head to spoken ones. Gansey said, Hic gaudimus gratius tibi locere loci pro nobis. The way it's written, he is stuttering, just so you know. He's, working through it. He looked at Ronan. How do I ask why you can't hear them? God, Gansey, if you paid attention... Closing his eyes, Ronan thought for a moment. Chronoteotimus? Gansey didn't need Ronan to translate the tree's hushed answers. The Latin was simple enough. He said aloud, the road isn't awake. The ley line? Blue suggested. A little wistfully, she added, but that doesn't explain why only you and Noah can hear it. The trees murmured, Si expergifacere via aramis indebitum. If you wake the line, they'll be in your debt, Ronan said. For a moment, they were all quiet, then looking at one another. It was a lot to take in, because it wasn't merely that the trees were speaking to them. It was that the trees themselves were sentient beings, capable of watching their movements. Was it only the trees in this strange wood, or did every tree observe their movements? Had they always been trying to speak to them? There was no way of knowing, either, if the trees were good or bad, if they loved or hated humans, if they had principles or compassion. They were like aliens, Gansey thought. Aliens that we have treated very badly for a very long time. If I were a tree, I would have no reason to love a human. It was happening. All these years he had been looking for this. Gansey said, ask them if they know where Glendower is. Adam looked startled. Without pausing, Ronan translated. It took a moment for the hissing voices to reply, and again, Gansey didn't need a translation. No, Gansey said. Something inside him had tightened and tightened and tightened until he asked the question. He'd thought hearing the answer would release it, but it didn't. Everyone else was looking at him. He wasn't sure why. Maybe something in his face was wrong. It felt wrong. He looked away from them all and said, It's very cold. Valde frigida. What's the way out, please? Amabo te ubi exitum? I think that's basically the words he said in English are basically the same words that he said in Latin. Roman? Oh my god. Kick me out, dude. What? The trees whispered and hissed, and Gansey realized. The trees whispered and hissed, and Gansey realized he might have been mistaken. It might have been only one voice all along. He wasn't entirely sure he'd ever heard it aloud either, now that he thought about it. It was possible that it had been said directly in his head this entire time. It was a disconcerting thought, and it distracted his listening. Noah had to help him recall everything that had been said, and Ronan had to think for a very long time before he was able to translate. Sorry, Ronan said. He was concentrating too hard to remember to look cool or surly. It's difficult. They said that we need to go back through the year, against the road, the line. They said that if we go back along the creek and turn left at the big sycamore, Platanus? I think sycamore. Then we'll find something they think we want to find. Then we'll be able to walk out of the woods and find our way back to our day. I don't know. I missed parts. But I'm sorry. It's okay, Gansey said. You're doing really well. In a low voice, he asked Adam, do you think we should do it? It occurs to me they might not be trusted. Adam's furrowed brow meant that this had occurred to him as well, but he replied, do we have another choice? I think we should trust them, Blue said. They knew me and Ronan, somehow, and that rock didn't say not to, right? She had a point. Ronan's handwriting, with its great care to prove its origin to them, had given them the key to speak to the trees, not a warning. Back we go, Gansey said. Careful not to slip. Then, louder, he said, Gratias, Reveniamus. I can't. I'm so sorry. If they put Spanish in front of me, I might be able to read it and not butcher it. Hey, who's, using the language of Latin that much? Really? Outside of translating stuff like this? Sorry. Maybe some people do. And I'm just not aware. I should hang out with people who speak Latin. But, actively. It is considered a dead language, isn't it? It's more for, historians and stuff? I don't know. I don't think it's in practice anymore. Okay. Gratias, Reveniamus. What did you say? Blue asked. Adam replied for him. Thanks, and that we'd be back. It wasn't difficult to adhere to the directions Ronan had translated. The creek was wide here, the water cold and slow between white frosted banks. Following it took them steadily downhill, and gradually the air around them began to warm. Sparse red leaves spotted the branches, and by the time Blue pointed out a massive sycamore, the peeling white and gray trunk too wide for her to put her arms around, they were in the sticky grips of summer. The leaves were full and green, moving and rubbing against one another in a constant murmured rustle. If there was a voice now, Gansey wasn't certain he'd hear it. We missed summer before, Adam pointed out. When we came the other way, we went straight to fall. Magical mosquitoes, Ronan said, smacking his arm. What a great place this is. Following the voice's directions, they turned left at the massive sycamore. Gansey wondered what it was that the trees thought they would want to find. He thought there was only one thing he was looking for. Then the trees opened up into a summery clearing, and it became obvious what the voice had meant. In the clearing, entirely out of place, was an abandoned car, a red Mustang, newer model. At first, it appeared to be covered with mud, but a closer inspection revealed that it was, in fact, coated with layers and layers of pollen and leaf litter. Leaves had caught in drifts in the cracks of the hood and under the spoiler, gathered over the windshield wipers and bunched around the tires. A sapling grew out from under the car, wrapping around the front fender. The scene was reminiscent of old shipwrecks, ancient boats turned into coral reefs by the wiles of time. Behind the car stretched a badly overgrown track that seemed to lead out of the woods. This must have been the way out, the trees meant. Bling, Ronan remarked, kicking one of the tires. The Mustang had massive, expensive wheels, and now that Gansey looked more closely at the car, he saw that it was covered with aftermarket details. Big rims, new spoiler, dark window tint, gaping exhaust. New money, his father would have said. Burns in the pocket. Look, Adam said. He rubbed a finger over the dust of the back window. Next to a Blink-182 sticker was an Aggling B decal. Figures, Blue said. Ronan tried the driver's side door. It came open. He laughed, once, sharp. There's a mummified hamburger in here. They all crowded around to see the interior, but apart from the dry, half-eaten hamburger on the passenger seat, still not sitting on its wrapper, there was not much to see. This car, too, was a riddle, like Blue's voice in the recorder. Gansey felt as if it was directed specifically at him. "Pop the trunk," he ordered. The trunk had a jacket in it, and beneath that an odd collection of sticks and springs. Frowning, Gansey withdrew the contraption, holding it by the largest rod. The pieces swung into place, several sticks hanging and twisting beneath the main one, and he understood all at once. "It's a dowsing rod." He turned to Adam, wanting verification. "Coincidence," Adam said, of course meaning that it wasn't. Gansey had the peculiar sensation he had first felt in the parking lot outside of Nino's, when Adam had warned him that he thought someone else was looking for the ley line. Then he realized that Blue and Noah were no longer in sight. "Where's Blue and Noah?" At her name, Blue reappeared, stepping over a log and back into the clearing. She said, "Noah's throwing up." "Why is he doing that?" Gansey asked. "Is he sick?" "I'll ask him," she replied, "as soon as he's finished puking." Gansey winced. "I think you'll find that Gansey prefers the word vomiting or evacuating," Ronan said brightly. "I think retching is the most specific word in this case," Blue corrected pointedly. "Retching?" said Ronan, without concern. This finally was something he knew something about. "Where is he?" "Noah." He pushed away from the Mustang and started back the way Blue had come. Blue noticed the dowsing rod in Gansey's hands. Was that in the car? A dowsing rod! He shouldn't have been surprised she knew what it was. Even if she wasn't psychic, her mother was, and this was technically a tool of the trade. The trunk. But that means that someone else was looking for the ley line. On the other side of the Mustang, Adam drew his fingers through the pollen on the car. He looked disquieted, and they decided it was more important than their car. Gansey glanced up at the trees around them, then back at the expensive car. In the distance, he heard the low voices of Ronan and Noah. "I think we'd better go. I think we need more information." Chapter 27, Princess. Oh, sorry. Okay. What did you... I don't know why I'm saying, what did you think like that? But, like, what did you think? Isn't that so good? Do you feel it picking up? The reason I want to stop at the chapter before was because it feels like things start moving faster once you get to that point. Once you get to Caves Water, once you get to the forest, the woods, the hills are alive. Once you get to Caves Water, it feels like everything just starts like boom, boom, boom. It's still happening. It's happening. It's happening. Do you notice that it's happening? It's like it's screaming at you. I really like it. Do you feel it picking up? I'm brought back to that conversation between Ronan and Gansey of the at night with the question of, do you feel it starting? I feel it starting. Personally. I don't know about you, but I feel it starting. I also feel like I've had to like pause recording so many times to like hack up a lung. I'm not sick. It's just every time I breathe in, it's like I breathe in the wrong way, and then like my body inhales saliva and then is like, and because we did that, you now must suffer. And so I just start hacking up a fucking lung. Quirky. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know if the format in which I'm doing this calls for me talking for at least a certain amount of time after each chapter, but I just really want to keep going, because with the speed that the picking up that this happens, I really just want to have it happen. I really want to just, it happens. Do you feel it happening? Do you feel it happening? And so I want to, talk about how I feel it happening. And yeah. Okay. Chapter 27. I think I did enough yappery. Do you feel like I did enough yappery? Chapter 27. Points. If you give up on me after this, if we're not allowed to talk, if you get tired of me, it's okay. Who am I kidding? You're regularly making noises when I'm on call with someone. Okay, anytime I'm on the phone, if it's not like my parents, you go, oh. I'll be on a call with like a friend that does not know you, and you decide that the best decision is to lean over my shoulder and moan. Okay? That's evil. Do you know how evil that is? I'm not even. You know what? You're not as even bad as the white boy. He's worse. Okay, we're doing this. We're doing this. Are you ready? Do you feel ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay. They're gonna, like, shoot me with a tranq gun so that I chill the fuck out. Chapter 27. As Blue got ready to go out the following Sunday morning, she was officially conflicted. Sundays were dog walking days. Actually, Sundays and Thursdays were dog walking days, but Blue had begged off the previous 2 weeks to spend time with the boys, so it felt like it had been a long time since she'd seen her dogs by proxy. The problem was that she was running distinctly low on money, and moreover, guilt at disobeying Mora was finally beginning to weigh on her. It had gotten so that she couldn't look her mother in the eye over dinner, but it was impossible now to imagine giving up the boys. She had to find a way to reconcile the two. But first she had to walk the dogs. On the way out to Willow Ridge, the phone in the kitchen rang, and Blue, a glass of cloudy apple juice in one hand and the laces of a high-top sneaker in the other, grabbed it. Hello? I'd like to speak to Blue, please, if she's in. It was Gansy's unmistakable, polite voice, the one he used to turn straw into gold. Clearly, he had known what he risked calling here, and clearly he had been prepared to speak to someone other than Blue about it. Despite her growing suspicion that her secrecy couldn't last, she wasn't sure how she felt about the fact that he could have blown her cover. Blue is getting ready to go walk other people's dogs, she said, setting down the juice and tugging on the sneaker, phone shoved between her ear and shoulder. And it's a good thing you got her and not someone else. I was prepared for that eventuality, Gansy said. It was strange to hear him over the phone. His voice didn't quite sound like his face looked. Still, I'm glad I caught you. How are you doing? Well, I trust. He doesn't mean to be condescending, Blue told herself. She told herself several times. You trust right. Brilliant. Look, Adam's working today and Ronan's at church with his brothers, but I'd like to go out and just look around. He added quickly. Not to the woods. I was thinking maybe to that church on your map. Do you want to... He faltered. Gansy was faltering? It took Blue a moment of his silence to realize that he was asking if she wanted to go with him. It took her another moment to realize that she'd never been anywhere with him without the other boys. I have to walk dogs. Oh, Gansy replied, sounding deflated. Well, okay. But it'll only take an hour. Oh, he repeated, about 14 shades brighter. Oh, shall I pick you up then? He talks so like, oh my God, I love him. Do I talk like this sometimes? Maybe, but like for him it's different and it's adorable. For me, it's dramatic. And I won't insult myself. I just know that it can be dramatic. Like when your cat starts climbing and trying to break my blinds, of which she has already managed many of. I'll be like, shall I toss you out the airlock? And she does not react because she doesn't know what those words mean. Shall I pick you up then? Blue glanced furtively over her shoulder toward the living room. Oh, no, I'll meet you in the parking lot. Brilliant, he said again. Top shelf. I think this will be interesting. See you in an hour. Top shelf? Gansy without Adam, Blue wasn't certain how this would work. Despite Adam's tentative interest in her, the boys seemed to act as a unit, a single, multi-headed entity. To see any of them without the presence of the others felt a little dangerous. But there wasn't an option of not going with Gansy. She wanted to explore as much as she did. No sooner had Blue hung up than she heard her name being called. Blue, my child, come in here. This was Mora's voice, and the sing-song rhythm to it was highly ironic. With a sinking sensation, Blue followed it into the living room, where she found Mora, Kala, and Persephone drinking what Blue suspected were screwdrivers. When she walked into the room, the women all looked up at her with indolent smiles, a pack of lionesses. Blue raised her eyebrows at the cocktails. The morning light through the windows turned the drinks a brilliant translucent yellow. It's only 10 o'clock. Kala reached out, enclosing Blue's wrist with her fingers, and dragged her onto the mint green love seat. Her glass was already mostly empty. It's a Sunday. What else would we do? I have to go walk dogs, Blue said. From her blue-striped chair across the room, Mora sipped her screwdriver and made a wild face. Oh, Persephone, you make them with far too much vodka. My hand always slips, Persephone said sadly from a wicker bench in front of the window. When Blue started to rise, Mora said, with a thinly veiled iron behind her tone, Sit with us a moment, Blue. Talk to us about yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and, oh, let's just talk about these past 2 weeks. Blue realized then that Mora was furious. She had seen her furious only a few times before, and having it directed at her made her skin go instantly clammy. Well, she trailed off. A lie seemed pointless. I'm not your dungeon master, interrupted Mora. I'm not going to bolt you in your room or send you to a convent for crying out loud. So you can just stop all the sneaking around stuff now. Right now. I wasn't. You were. I have been your mother since you were born, and I promise you, you were. So I take it you and Gansey get along, then? Mora's expression was annoyingly knowing. Mom! Orla told me about his muscle car, Mora continued. Her voice was still angry and artificially bright. The fact that Blue was well aware that she'd earned it made the sting of it even worse. You aren't planning on kissing him, are you? Mom, that will never happen, Blue assured her. You did meet him, didn't you? I wasn't sure if driving an old loud Camaro was the male equivalent of shredding your t-shirts and gluing cardboard trees to your bedroom walls. Trust me, Blue said. Gansey and I are nothing like each other. And they aren't cardboard. They're repurposed canvas. The environment breathes a sigh of relief. Mora attempted another sip of her drink, wrinkling her nose, and she shot a glare at Persephone. Persephone looked martyred. After a pause, Mora noted in a slightly softer voice, I'm not entirely happy that you're getting in a car without airbags. Our car doesn't have airbags, Blue pointed out. Mora picked a long strand of Persephone's hair from the rim of her glass. Yes, but you always take your bike. Blue stood up, and she suspected that the green fuzz of the sofa was now adhered to the back of her leggings. Can I go now? Am I in trouble? You are in trouble. I told you to stay away from him, and you didn't, Mora said. I just haven't decided what to do about it yet. My feelings are hurt. I've consulted with several people who tell me that I'm within my rights to feel hurt. Do teenagers still get grounded? Did that only happen in the 80s? I'll be very angry if you ground me, Blue said, still wobbly from her mother's unfamiliar displeasure. I'll probably rebel and climb out my window with a bedsheet rope. Her mother rubbed a hand over her face. Her anger had completely burned itself out. You're well into it, aren't you? That didn't take long. If you don't tell me not to see them, I don't have to disobey you, Blue suggested. This is what you get, Mora, for using your DNA to make a baby, Kala said. Mora sighed. Blue, I know you're not an idiot. It's just sometimes smart people do dumb things. Kala growled. Don't be one of them. Persephone, asked Mara. In her small voice, Persephone said, I have nothing to add. After a moment of consideration, she added, however, if you're going to punch someone, don't put your thumb inside your fist. It would be a shame to break it. Okay, Blue said hurriedly. I'm out. You could at least say sorry, Mora said. Pretend like I have some power over you. Blue wasn't sure how to reply to this. Mora had all sorts of control of Blue, but it wasn't usually the sort that came with ultimatums or curfew. So she just said, I'm sorry, I should have told you I was going to do what you didn't want me to do. Mora said, that was not as satisfying as I imagined it would be. Kala caught Blue's wrist again, and for a moment Blue was worried that Kala would sense the level of strangeness surrounding Gansey's quest, but she merely swallowed the last of her drink before purring, With all this running around, don't forget our movie night on Friday, Blue. Our movie night, Blue repeated. Kala's eyebrows hardened. You promised. For a shapeless moment, Blue tried to remember when she had ever talked about a movie night with Kala, and then she realized what this was really about. The conversation from days and days ago, about tossing Neve's room. I forgot that was this week. Blue replied. Mora swirled her drink, which still looked mostly full. She always preferred watching other people drink to doing it herself. Which movie? Even dwarves started small, Kala replied immediately. In the original German, Ochsverge haben klein angefangen. Mora winced. I don't know if I butchered that or not. Mora winced, though Blue couldn't tell if it was at the movie or at Kala's accent. She just said, just as well, Neve and I are out that morning. Kala raised an eyebrow and Persephone picked at a string on her lace stockings. What are you doing? Blue asked. Looking for my father, scrying in pools. She has that in those two questions in italics, so that's her thoughts. Mora stopped swirling her drink. Not hanging out with Gansey. At least Blue could still be certain that her mother would never lie to her. She just wouldn't say anything at all. Chapter 28. Oh, lies of omission from a trusted person. Oh, I mean, honestly, when you consider, like, having a very important figure of authority in your life, it's better at least that they just don't tell you anything than they actively lie to you. I mean, like, it hurts me, at least, knowing that there's information I'm not being given because I'm a very, like, confused person. But I will be honest that, you know, many medias that I've consumed, of them, there have been some things that have kind of given you the message of maybe it's okay not to know everything. Maybe it's okay to stop seeking certain knowledge. Maybe it's okay to not have every single answer out there. And so, you know, having that mentality is important. But it does give you an interesting dynamic to look at between Mora and Blue. That's like, they have a good relationship. It's just like, it's tougher in the spots where they're less communicative because it's specifically in I'm not telling you way. Not even in just like I'm not telling you and I'm actively aware that I'm not telling you. I'm keeping information from you. And it's information that would probably like be important to you to know, but I don't trust you with it. Even though I'm supposed to trust you and you're supposed to trust me, and that's the dynamic we're supposed to have, I don't trust you. And it's unfortunate to have that with a person in this case. I'm gonna have to pause to cough again. I just noticed that like every time I breathed in, like I could hear like a like a wheezing sound. Wheezer. Okay, stop, please. This is embarrassing. I'm infected. It's a bad thing. I'm infected with the brain rot. No, don't say that. Don't say that. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's getting bad. I'm an intelligent person, and I think about things critically, and I consider my time a valuable resource that I use on consuming media and making things. Okay? Media that lets you think, that makes you think, okay? And that's important, and I do that, okay? Jesus Christ! Okay, well, let's not bring him into this. He's not even back yet. Okay. The second coming joke. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay. The resurrection. Okay. I was not trying to make a sex joke. Christ almighty. Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready for chapter 28? I don't really know what else to comment on other than that. Also, just like I know you can relate to the idea of being called on a phone by someone and worrying that someone else might have seen that they were the one calling you. Because I've experienced that. And that's a very normal and universal experience for people who, you know, I don't know, weren't born with a cell phone in their hand. That belonged to them and, you know, given privacy pretty immediately in all respects like that. Also, this was written in, like 2012 or 13 or 14 or 15, like something like that. It was before 2017 at the very least. I don't know the exact within that time when this book was released, but I do know that it was during a time where phones were not as like every child has them and every person who has a job has them. Because the way that I view phones and like having them is very much like yeah, it's technically necessary to a certain extent, but I think that it's really only necessary in the way that like being able to have a job is. They ask for your phone number. And yeah, you can have like a computer or something so that you can like email and stuff, but you actually can't have a job if you don't have a phone because they always want your phone number and they want to be able to contact you. They want to be able to not just call you but text you, and you need to sign up to for things with your phone number, and it's like it's very, I mean, the job market was already pretty inaccessible, but they just made it even more with making you required to have certain things. I mean, you know, there are still jobs that exist that you don't necessarily need a phone for, or need a cell phone specifically, a mobile number. But there are too many jobs that before the technology surge were accessible to you if you didn't have anything more than a landline even. And now there aren't. Like, Blue and Adam can both function having multiple jobs without having cell phones and only having landlines. And Blue has access to her landline on a regular basis, and Adam does not. And they both are able to maintain jobs as teenagers without phones on a regular basis and without texting or anything like that. And, you know, that just does not fly nearly as easily nowadays in most places. Might be a little bit easier if you're working at like a locally owned fast food place, because they might not use an app or website for their schedules. They might do it on paper, like one place I worked at. But in general, the world is becoming more and more inaccessible to people who don't have as much money, and it already was that way, but it just is increasingly on a regular basis, making it harder for folks to do shit. Okay, am I getting political? Sorry. No, I'm getting righteous. Okay, I'm getting justicey. I'm getting, like, notice how we oppress I'm getting, like, I'm not getting preachy. I'm having a conversation. But that's why it's okay that they don't have phones, because this was done before the big technology boom that happened and blah, 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 blah. Okay, chapter 28. Okay, well, I just need to clarify. It's not that deep, but it is that deep, okay? I didn't need to go on that rant, but I wanted to, because it's an important conversation to have. Okay, stop it. I'm stopping, okay? I'm stopping. Chapter 28. Why the church? Blue asked from the passenger seat of the Camaro. She'd never ridden in the front before, and in the passenger seat, the sensation of the car being a few thousand parts flying in uneasy formation was even more pronounced. Gansey installed comfortably behind the wheel with expensive. I am just stuttering mess today. I'm sorry. Gansey installed comfortably behind the wheel with expensive sunglasses and topsiders, took his time answering. I don't know, because it's on the line, but it's not as whatever caves water is. I have to think more about caves water before we go back. Because it's like we're going into someone's house. Blue tried not to look at Gansey's boat shoes. She felt better about him as a person if she pretended he wasn't wearing them. Exactly. That's exactly what it feels like. He pointed at her like he pointed at Adam when Adam made a comment he approved of. Then he put his hand back on the gear shift knob to stop its rattling. Blue found it a thrilling idea, actually, that the trees were thinking creatures, that they could speak, that they knew her. Turn here, Blue ordered, and Gansey nearly passed the ruined church. With a broad smile, he hauled on the wheel and dropped down a few gears. With only a few protesting rubber noises, they made it into the overgrown drive. As they did, the glove box fell open and shot its contents onto Blue's lap. Why do you even have this car? She asked. Gansey shut off the engine. But her legs still felt like they vibrated in time with it. Because it's a classic, he replied primly. Because it's unique. But it's a piece of crap. Don't they make unique classics that don't? Blue demonstrated her point by unsuccessfully shoving the door to the glove box shut a few times. Now, as she reinserted the box's contents and slammed the door shut, and once again ejected its contents onto her legs. Oh, they do, Gansey said, and she thought she detected a bit of an edge to his voice. Not anger, really, but irony. He put a mint leaf in his mouth and climbed out of the car. Blue replaced the car's registration and an ancient strip of beef jerky in the glove box, and then she inspected the other object that had fallen into her lap. It was an EpiPen. A syringe meant to restart someone's heart in the case of a severe allergic reaction. Unlike the beef jerky, its expiration date was current. Whose is this? She asked. Gansey was already out of the car, holding the EMF reader and stretching as if he'd been in the car for hours instead of 30 minutes. She noticed that he had impressive arm muscles, probably related to the Agley B rowing team sticker she'd noticed on the glove box. Glancing over his shoulder at her, he replied, dismissive. Mine. You've got to jimmy that latch to the right, then it'll shut. She did as he recommended, and sure enough, the glove box latched, the EpiPen safely replaced inside. On the other side of the car, Gansey tipped his head back to look at the storm clouds. Living things, moving towers. In the very deep distance, they were nearly the same color as the blue edge of the mountains. The road they'd come in on was a dappled blue-green river twisting back toward the town. The indirect light of the sun was peculiar, nearly yellow, thick with humidity. Apart from the birds, there was no sound but the slow, far-away growl of thunder. I hope the weather holds, he remarked. He strode over to the ruined church. This, Blue had discovered, was how Gansey got places. Striding. Walking was for ordinary people. Standing beside him, Blue found the church eerier in the daylight, as she always did. Growing inside the ruined walls among collapsed bits of roof, knee-high grass, and trees as tall as her strove toward the sunlight, there was no evidence there had ever been any pews or any congregation. There was something bleak and meaningless about it. Death with no afterlife. She remembered standing here with Neve all those weeks ago. She wondered if Neve really was looking for her father, and if she was, what she intended to do with him if she found him. She thought about the spirits walking into the church, and she wondered if Gansey said, I feel like I've been here before. Blue didn't know how to answer. She'd already told him one half-truth about St. Mark's Eve, and she wasn't sure if it was right to tell him the other half. Moreover, she wasn't sure if it felt true. Standing next to him in his very alive state, she couldn't imagine that he would be dead in less than a year. He was wearing a teal polo shirt, and it seemed impossible that someone in a teal polo shirt could perish of anything other than heart disease at age 86, possibly at a polo match. Blue asked, What's your magic-o-meter doing right now? Gansey turned it toward her. His knuckles were pale, bone pressed through skin. Red lights flashed across the surface of the meter. He said, It's pegged, same as in the wood. Blue surveyed their surroundings. In all likelihood, all of this was private property, even the ground the church was on. But the area behind the church looked more remote. If we go that way, it seems less like we'll be shot for trespassing. We can't be low profile because of your shirt. Aquamarine is a wonderful color, and I won't be made to feel bad for wearing it, Gansey said. But his voice was a bit thin, and he glanced back at the church again. Just then, he looked younger than she'd ever seen him. His eyes narrowed, his hair messed up, features unstudied, young and, strangely enough, afraid. Blue thought, I can't tell him. I can never tell him. I have to just try to stop it from happening. Then Gansey, suddenly charming again, flipped a hand in the direction of her purple tunic dress. Lead the way, Eggplant. She found a stick to poke at the ground for snakes before they set off through the grass. The wind smelled like rain, and the ground rumbled with thunder, but the weather held. The machine in Gansey's hands blinked red constantly, only flickering to orange when they stepped too far away from the invisible line. Thanks for coming, Jane, Gansey said. Blue shot him a dirty look. You're welcome, Dick. He looked pained. Please don't. This genuine expression robbed all the glee of using his real name. She kept walking. You're the only one who doesn't seem fazed by this, he said after a moment. It's not that I'm accustomed to it, but I've run across some unusual things before, and I guess I just... But Ronan and Adam and Noah, they all seem nonplussed. Blue pretended she knew what nonplussed meant. I live with this, though. My mother is a psychic. All her friends are psychic. This is... Well, it's not like it's normal, but it's how I always thought it would feel to be them. You know, to see things that other people don't. I spent years trying to get it to do this, Gansey admitted. There was something about the timbre of his voice that surprised Blue. It wasn't until he spoke again she realized he was using the tone she'd heard him use with Adam. I've spent 18 years trying to find the Henrietta line. Was it what you expected? I don't know what I expected. I'd read all about the effects of the line, but I never thought it would be so pronounced. So I never expected the trees. I never expected it to happen so fast, either. I'm used to getting one clue every month and then beating that dead horse until another one comes along. Not this. He paused, his smile wide and benevolent. This is all down to you. Putting us on the line, finally. I could kiss you. Though he was obviously joking, Blue skittered to the side. What was that for? She asked Do you believe in psychics? Well, I went to one, didn't I? That doesn't mean anything. Lots of people go to psychics just for a laugh. I went because I believe. Well, I believe in ones that are good at what they do. I just think there's quite a lot of hooey you have to wade through to get to them. Why? Blue viciously stabbed the ground with her snake stick. Because my mom's told me, ever since I was born, that if I kiss my true love, he'll die. Gansey laughed. Don't laugh, you... Blue was going to say bastard, but it felt too strong and she lost the nerve. Well, it's just a very precautionary sounding sort of thing, isn't it? Don't date or you'll go blind. Kiss your true love and he bites it. It's not just her, Blue protested. Every psychic or medium I've ever met tells me the same thing. Besides, my mom's not like that. She wouldn't just play around with something like that. It's not pretend. Sorry, Gansey said, realizing she was genuinely annoyed with him. I was being a dick again. Do you know how he's supposed to die, this unlucky guy? Blue shrugged. Ah, devil's in the details, I guess. So you just kiss nobody in a precautionary way? He watched her nod. That seems grim, Jane. I won't lie. She shrugged again. I don't usually tell people. I don't know why I told you. Don't tell Adam. Gansey's eyebrows spiked up toward his hairline. It's like that, is it? Her face went instantly hot. No, I mean, no. It's just because it's not... Because I don't know. I would rather play it safe. Blue fantasized that time had begun again with them getting out of the car and her instead striking up a conversation about the weather or which classes he was taking. It didn't seem like her face would ever stop burning. Gansey's voice, when he replied, was a little rough. Well, if you killed Adam, I'd be quite upset. I'll do my best not to. For a moment, the silence was uneven and uncomfortable, and then he said, his voice more ordinary. Thanks for telling me. Trusting me with something like that. Relieved, Blue replied. Well, you told me about how you felt about Ronan and Adam and the non-plussing thing, only I still want to know, why are you looking? For Glendower. He smiled ruefully, and for a moment, Blue was afraid that he was about to switch over to flippant, glossy Gansey, but in the end, he just said, It's a difficult story to summarize. You're in pre-Ivy League high school. Try. All right. Where to start? Maybe... You saw my EpiPen. It's for bee stings. I'm allergic. Badly. Blue stopped in her tracks, alarmed. Hornets nested on the ground, and this was prime territory for them. Quiet areas close to trees. Gansey, this is the countryside, where bees live. He made a dismissive gesture, as if eager to be off this particular subject. Keep poking things with your stick, and it'll be okay. My stick? All week we've been walking through the woods. That seems awfully... Cavalier, Gansey suggested. The truth is that there's not even really a point having an EpiPen. The last they told me was that it would only work if I got stung once, and even then, they don't know. I was 4 the first time I had to go to the hospital for a sting, and the reactions only got worse after that. It is what it is. It's this or I live in a bubble. Blue thought about the death card and how her mother hadn't actually interpreted it for Gansey. It was possible, she thought, that the card hadn't been about Gansey's foretold tragedy at all, but rather about his life, how he walked side by side with death every day. With her stick, Blue thwacked the ground ahead of them. Okay, go on. Gansey sucked in his lips and then released them. Well, 7 years ago, I was at a dinner party with my parents. I can't remember what it was for. I think one of my dad's friends had gotten the party nomination. For Congress? The ground beneath their feet or the air around them vibrated with thunder. Yeah, I don't remember. You know how you sometimes don't remember everything, right? Ronan says that memories are like dreams. You never remember how you got to the front of the classroom with no clothes on. Anyway, the party was dull. I was 9 or 10. It was all the little black... I can't read. Anyway, the party was dull. I was 9 or 10. It was all little black dresses and red ties and any sort of food you wanted, as long as it was shrimp. A few of us kids started to play hide and seek. I remember thinking I was too old to play hide and seek, but there was nothing else to do. Blue and he entered a narrow copse of trees, sparse enough that grass grew between them instead of brambles. This Gansey, this storytelling Gansey, was a different person altogether from any of the other versions of him she'd encountered. She couldn't not listen. It was hot as Hades. It was spring, but it had suddenly decided it was summer. Virginia spring. You know how that is. Heavy somehow. There was no shade in the backyard, but there was this great forest that bounded it. Dark and green and blue, like diving into a lake. In I went, and it was fantastic. Only 5 minutes, and I couldn't see the house. Blue stopped poking the ground. Did you get lost? Gansey shook his head a little. I stepped on a nest. His eyes were narrowed in that way people do when they're trying hard to appear casual, but it was obvious this story was anything but casual to him. Hornets, like you said. They nest on the ground. I don't have to tell you. But I didn't know back then. The first thing I felt was a little prickle on my sock. I thought I'd stepped on a thorn. There were a ton of them, those green whip-shaped ones. But then I felt another. They were just such small hurts, you know? Blue felt a little sick. He continued. But then I felt one on my hand, and by the time I jumped away, I saw them, all over my arms. Somehow he managed to take her there, to put her in that moment of discovery. Blue's heart felt dragged down, snared with venom. What did you do? She asked. I knew I was dead. I knew I was dead before I started to feel everything start to go wrong in my body. Because I'd been to the hospital for just one sting, and this was like 100. They were in my hair. They were in my ears, Blue. She asked, Were you scared? He didn't have to answer. She saw it in the hollow of his eyes. What happened? I died, he said. I felt my heart stop. The hornets didn't care. They were still stinging me even though I was dead. Gansey stopped. He said, This is the difficult part. Those are my favorite, Blue replied. The trees were quiet around them. The only sound was the growl of thunder. After a pause, she added, a little shamed. Sorry, I didn't mean to be, but my whole life is the difficult part. Nobody believes in what my family does. I'm not going to laugh. He exhaled slowly. I heard a voice. It was a whisper. I won't forget what it said. It said, You will live because of Glendower. Someone else on the ley line is dying when they should not, and so you will live when you should not. Blue was very quiet. The air pressed on them. I told Helen. She said it was a hallucination. Gansey brushed a hanging vine from his face. The brush was getting thicker here, the trees closer. They probably needed to turn back. His voice was peculiar, formal and certain. It was not a hallucination. This was the Gansey who had written the journal. The truth of it, the magic of it, possessed her. She asked, And that's enough to make you spend your life looking for Glendower? Gansey replied, Once Arthur knew the Grail existed, how could he not look for it? Thunder growled beneath them again, the hungry snarl of an invisible beast. Blue said, That's not really an answer. He didn't look at her. He replied, voice terrible, I need to, Blue. Every light on the EMF reader went out. Equal parts relieved to be back on safe ground and disappointed not to pry deeper into the real Gansey, Blue touched the machine. Did we step off the line? They retreated several yards, but the machine didn't turn back on. Is the battery dead? She suggested. I don't know how to check. Gansey switched it off and then on again. Blue stretched her hand out for the reader. The moment she took it from him, the lights burst red, solid red. No blinking. She turned it from side to side, orange to her left, red to her right. They met each other's eyes. Take it back, Blue said. But as soon as Gansey touched the EMF reader, the lights went dead again. When the thunder came this time, seductive and simmering, she felt like it had started something inside her, trembling, that didn't stop after the sound had died. I keep thinking there must be a logical explanation, Gansey said, but there hasn't been all week. Blue thought there probably was a logical explanation, and she thought it was this. Blue made things louder. Only she had no idea what she was amplifying at this moment. The air shuddered again as thunder grumbled. There was no sign of the sun now. All that was left was the heavy green air around them. He asked, Where is it steering us? Letting the solid red light lead them, Blue stepped hesitantly through the trees. They had only made it a few yards when the machine went dead again. No amount of switching hands or manipulation would encourage it to flicker again. They stood with the machine between them, heads bowed, looking silently at the dark face of it. Blue asked, What now? Gansey stared down between their feet, directly below the machine. Step back, there's... Oh my gosh, Blue said, jerking away from Gansey. Then again, Oh my... But she couldn't finish the sentence, because she had just stepped off something that looked an awful lot like a human arm bone. Gansey was the first to crouch, brushing away the leaves from the bone. Sure enough, beneath the first arm bone was a second. A filthy watch encircled the wrist bone. Everything looked fake, a skeleton in the woods. This can't be happening. Oh no, Blue breathed. Don't touch it. Fingerprints. But the corpse was long beyond fingerprints. The bones were clean as a museum piece, the flesh long since rotted off, and there were only threads remaining of whatever the person had worn. Picking carefully at leaves, Gansey uncovered the entire skeleton. It lay, crumpled, one leg crooked up, arms sprawled to either side of its skull, a freeze frame of tragedy. Time had spared strange elements and taken others. The watch was there, but the hand was not. The shirt was gone, but a tie remained, rippled over the hills and valleys of the collapsed rib bones. The shoes were dirty but unchanged from exposure. The socks, too, were preserved inside the leather shoes, ankle-height bags of foot bones. The skull's cheek was smashed in. She wondered if that was how the person had died. "Gansey," Blue said, voice flat. This was a kid. This was a kid from Aglanby." She pointed at his rib cage. Crooked between two bare ribs was an Aglanby patch, the synthetic fibers of the embroidery impervious to the weather. They stared at each other over the body. Lightning lit the sides of their faces. Blue was very aware of the skull beneath Gansey's skin, his cheekbones so close to the surface, high and square, like those on the death card. "We should report it," she said. "Wait," he replied. It only took him a moment to find the wallet beneath the hip bone. It was good leather, spattered and bleached, but mostly unmolested. Gansey flipped it open, eyeing the multicolored edges of credit cards that lined one side. He spotted the top of a driver's license and thumbed it out. Blue heard Gansey's breath catch in naked shock. The face on the driver's license was Noah's. Chapter 29. How do you feel? How are you feeling? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Kiss, kiss, pookums. Chapter 29. Are you so ready? I don't really know what to say right now. It's good. It's good. Do you feel good? It's picking up. It's going. It's moving. The car is fast. We are going 80 on the highway, and it is actually a speed limit of 70. So, but it's fine because 25 miles per hour over the speed limit is actually a felony. So as long as we keep it under, all it is a fine. Of which, I can't afford, but it's better than going to jail. Okay, chapter 29. At 8 p.m., Gansey called Adam at the trailer factory. "I'm coming to get you," he said, and hung up. He didn't say it was important, but this was the first time he'd ever asked for Adam to leave work, so it had to be. Outside, the Camaro idled in the parking lot, the uneven tripping of the engine echoing across the darkness. Adam got in. "I'll explain when we get there," said Gansey. He put the car into gear, stomping the gas hard enough that the back tires squeaked on the asphalt as they left. From Gansey's expression, Adam thought that maybe something had happened to Ronan. Maybe, finally, Ronan had happened to Ronan. But it wasn't the hospital that they drove to. The Camaro tore straight into the lot outside Monmouth Manufacturing. Together they climbed the dark, creaking stairs to the second floor. Under Gansey's hands, the door fell open, crashing against the wall. "Noah!" he shouted. The room stretched out, limitless in the dark. Against the windows, the miniature Henrietta was a false skyline. Gansey's alarm clock beeped continuously, sounding a warning for a time that had long since passed. Adam's fingers searched unsuccessfully for the light watch. Gansey shouted again, "We need to or the light switch. God, I can't read. Gansey shouted again, "We need to talk. Noah!" The door to Ronan's room opened, releasing a square of light. Ronan was silhouetted in the doorway. One hand curled against his chest, the raven foundling hunched down between his fingers. He pulled a pair of silkily expensive headphones from his ears and looped them around his neck. "Man, you're back late." "Parrish? I thought you were working." So Ronan knew no more than Adam did. Adam felt a cold bit of relief over this, which he quickly extinguished. "I was." Adam finally found the light switch. The room was transformed into a twilight planet, the corners alive with the sharp mouse shadows. "Where's Noah?" demanded Gansey. He jerked the alarm clock's power cord out of the wall to silence it. Ronan took in Gansey's state and raised an eyebrow. "He's out." "No," Gansey said, emphatic. "He is not." "Noah!" He backed into the center of the room, turning to look at the corners, the rafters, searching places no one would ever find a roommate. Adam hesitated by the door. He couldn't figure out how this could be over Noah. Noah, who could go unnoticed for hours, whose room was pristine, whose voice was never raised. Gansey stopped searching and turned to Adam. "Adam," he demanded, "what is Noah's last name?" Before Gansey had asked, Adam felt as if he must have known. But now the answer slid away from his mouth, and then from his thoughts entirely, leaving his lips parted. It was like losing his way to class, losing his way home, forgetting the phone number for Monmouth Manufacturing. I don't know, Adam admitted. Gansey pointed at Adam's chest like he was shooting a gun or making a point. It's Cherney, by the way. Cherney, however it's pronounced. Noah Cherney. Throwing his head back, he shouted to the air, I know you're here, Noah. Dude, Ronan remarked. You're flipped. Open his door, Gansey ordered. Tell me what's in there. With a graceful shrug, Ronan slid out of his doorway and turned the knob on Noah's door. It fell open, revealing the corner of an always-made bed. It looks like a nunnery as usual, Ronan said. All the personality of a mental facility. What am I looking for? Drugs, girls, guns? Tell me, Gansey said, which classes you share with Noah. Ronan snorted. None. Me neither, Gansey replied. He looked at Adam, who shook his head slightly. Nor Adam. How is that possible? He didn't wait for an answer, though. When does he eat? Have you ever seen him eat? I don't really care, Ronan said. He stroked Chainsaw's head with a single finger, and she tilted her beak up in response. It was a strange moment in a strange evening, and if it had happened the day before, it would have struck Adam that he rarely sought such thoughtless kindness from Ronan. Gansey shot questions at both of them. Does he pay rent? When did he move in? Have you ever questioned it? Ronan shook his head. Dude, you have really left the reservation. What is your problem? I spent the afternoon with the police, Gansey said. I went out with Blue to the church. Now the jealousy stabbed Adam, deep and unexpected, a wound that kept stinging, no less painful for him not being certain what precisely had inflicted it. Gansey continued. Don't look at me like that, both of you. The point is, we found a body, rotted to the bones. Do you know whose it was? Ronan's gaze held Gansey's, solid. Adam felt like he had dreamt the answer to this question. Behind them, the door to the apartment suddenly slammed shut. They whirled to face it, but there was no one there, only the fluttering of map corners on the wall to show that it had been moved. The boys stared at the subtle movement of the paper, listening to the echo of the slam. There was no breeze. Adam's skin crawled. Mine, Noah said. As one, they spun back around. Noah stood in the doorway to his room. His skin was pale as parchment, and his eyes were shadowed and unspecific, as they always were after dark. There was the ubiquitous smudge on his face, only now it looked like dirt, or blood, or possibly like a hollow, his bones crushed beneath his skin. Ronan's posture was wound tight. Your room was empty. I just looked in it. I told you, Noah said. I told everyone. Adam had to close his eyes for a long moment. Gansey, if anything, looked finally back under control. What Gansey needed out of life was facts, things he could write in his journal, things he could state twice and underline, no matter how improbable those facts were. Adam realized that all along, Gansey had not really known what he was going to find when he brought Adam back here. How could he have? How could anyone truly believe? He's dead, Gansey said. His arms were tied over his chest. You're really dead, aren't you? Noah's voice was plaintive. I told you. They stared at him, just feet away from Ronan. Really, he was so much less real than Ronan. Adam thought it should have been obvious. It was ludicrous that they hadn't noticed. Ridiculous that they had not thought about his last name, about where he came from, about the classes he did or did not go to. His clammy hands, his pristine room, his unchanging, smudgy face. He had been dead as long as they'd known him. Reality was a bridge breaking beneath Adam. Shit, man, Ronan said, finally, a little desperate. All those nights you gave me grief about keeping you awake, and you don't even need to sleep. Adam asked, barely audible, How did you die? Noah turned his face away. No, Gansey said, purpose crystallized in the word. That's not the question, is it? The question is, who killed you? Now Noah wore the retreating expression that came when something made him uncomfortable. His chin turned, his eyes hooded and alien. Adam was suddenly profoundly aware that Noah was a dead thing, and he was not. If you can tell me, Gansey said, I can find a way to put the police on the trail. Noah's chin ducked farther, his expression somehow black, his eye sockets hollowed and skull-like. Were they looking at a boy, or something that looked like a boy? Adam wanted to say, Don't push him, Gansey. In Ronan's hands, Chainsaw began to scream. Bright, frantic caws that split the air. It was as if there was nothing in the world but the sound of her frenzied cries. It seemed impossible that such a small body could make such a huge sound. Noah lifted his head, his eyes wide and open and ordinary. He looked frightened. Ronan folded a hand over Chainsaw's head until she quieted. Noah said, I don't want to talk about it. His shoulders were drawn up around his ears, and he looked, now, like the Noah they had always known, the Noah they had never questioned as being one of them, one of the living. Okay, Gansey said. Then, again, okay, what would you like to do? I'd like... Noah began trailing off, as he always did, shrinking back into his room. Was this what Noah did when he was alive, Adam wondered? Or was this a function of being dead, of trying to hold an ordinary conversation? Ronan and Adam both glanced at Gansey at once. It seemed like there was nothing to be done or said. Even Ronan seemed subdued, his normal barbs hidden, until they were sure what the new rules were. He, too, seemed reluctant to find out how otherworldly Noah could be when provoked. Looking away from the others, Gansey asked, Noah? The space in Noah's doorway was empty. At the threshold of Noah's room, Ronan pushed the door all the way open. The room inside was stark and untouched, the bed so clearly unslept in. The world hummed around Adam, suddenly charged with possibilities, not all of them pleasant. He felt like he was sleepwalking. Nothing was the truth until he could put his hands on it. Ronan began to swear, long and filthy and continuous, without stopping for breath. Gansey's thumb worried over his bottom lip. He asked Adam, What's going on? Adam replied, We're being haunted. Chapter 30. Oh my God. Are you feeling the feelings that are feeling inside your soul? He did tell them. He did tell them. He literally, I mean, I've been dead for 7 years. Ah, shit. You just thought he was emo? I mean, maybe you already picked up on it. I don't know. Ain't that just the way? Okay, I don't really know what else to say. Do you feel it, though, in your bones? Good. Feel it. Feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it, feel it. Okay, chapter 30. Okay. Blue was more distressed than she thought she would have been by the fact that Noah was dead. From talking to the police, it was clear that he'd never been alive, at least not since she'd met him, but still, she felt a curious grief over it. For starters, Noah's presence in Monmouth changed distinctly after they discovered his body. They never seemed to get the entire Noah anymore. Gansey would hear Noah's voice in the parking lot, or Blue would see his shadow fall across the sidewalk as she headed over to Monmouth. Or Ronan would find scratches on his skin. He had always been a ghost, but now he was acting like it. Maybe, Adam had suggested, it's because his body's been removed from the ley line. Ooh. Blue just kept thinking of the skull with its face smashed in, of Noah retching at the sight of the Mustang. Not throwing up, just going through the actions of it, because he was dead. She wanted to find whoever did it, and she wanted him to fester in a cell for the rest of his life. Blue was so engrossed in Noah's plight that she nearly forgot that she and Kala were supposed to search Neve's room on Friday. Kala must have recognized that she was distracted, because she left a cheekily obvious note on the fridge for Blue to find before school. Blue, don't forget movie night tonight. Swiping the sticky note from the door, Blue stuffed it in her backpack. Blue, Neve said. Blue jumped as far into the air as a human being could manage, spinning at the same time. Neve sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea in front of her, a book in her hand. She wore a cream shirt, the precise color of the curtains behind her. I didn't see you there, Blue gasped. The sticky note in her backpack felt like a burning confession. Neve smiled mildly and placed her book face down. I haven't seen much of you this week. I've been out with friends. Between each word, Blue told herself to stop sounding suspicious. I've heard about Gansey, Neve said. I advised Mora that it wasn't wise to try to keep you apart. You're clearly meant to cross paths. Oh, thanks for that. You seem distressed, Neve said. With one of her lovely hands, she patted the seat of the chair beside her. Would you like me to do anything for you? Would you like me to look at anything for you? Do a reading? Oh, thanks for that, but I can't. I have to make it to school, Blue said quickly. Part of her wondered if Neve asked these things out of kindness or if she asked them out of reverse psychology, because she knew what Kala and Blue were planning. Either way, Blue didn't want any part of the scrying Neve did. Bundling her things toward the doorway, she did a kind of casual half wave over her shoulder. She had made it only a few steps when Neve said to her back, "You're looking for a god. Didn't you suspect that there was also a devil?" Blue froze in the doorway. She turned her head, but didn't quite face Neve. "Oh, I haven't been poking around," Neve said. "What you're doing is big enough for me to see while I'm looking at other things." Now Blue faced her. Neve's mild expression hadn't changed. Her hands were cupped around the mug. Numbers are easy for me," Neve said. "They came first, really. I could always pull them out of thin air. Important dates, telephone numbers, they're the easiest. But death's the next easiest. I can tell when someone's touched it." Blue clutched her backpack straps. Her mother and her friends were strange, yes, but they knew they were strange. They knew when they were saying something weird. Neve didn't seem to have that filter. She replied finally, "He'd been dead a long time." Neve shrugged. "There'll be more before it's done." Lost for words, Blue just slowly shook her head. "I'm just warning you," Neve said. "Watch for the devil. When there's a god, there's always a legion of devils." Ooh, chapter 31. Ooh. I like that sentence. Watch for the devil. When there's a god, there's always a legion of devils. Maybe I'm just feeling that way because I finished watching Good Omens last night. Feeling weird about... Yeah. Chapter 31. For the first time ever, Adam wasn't happy to have a day off from Ageline B. With Friday a scheduled teacher work day, Gansey had reluctantly gone to his parents for his mother's belated birthday. Ronan was drinking and boorish in his room, and Adam was left studying at Gansey's desk in Monmouth Manufacturing in his absence. The public school had classes as normal, but he could always hope that Blue would come over when she was done. The apartment felt oppressive without anyone else in the main room. Part of Adam wanted to lure Ronan out of his room for company, but most of him realized that Ronan was, in his unappealing and unspoken way, grieving for Noah. So Adam remained at Gansey's desk, scratching at some Latin homework, aware that the light that came in the windows didn't seem to light the floorboards as well as it ordinarily did. The shadows shifted and clung. Adam smelled the mint plant on Gansey's desk, but he also smelled Noah, that combination of his deodorant and soap and sweat. "Noah," Adam said to the empty apartment, "are you here, or are you out haunting Gansey?" There was no response. He looked down at his paper. The Latin verbs looked nonsensical, a made-up language. "Can we fix it, Noah? Whatever's made you like this, instead of like you were before?" Adam jumped at a crash directly beside the desk. It took him a moment to realize that Gansey's mint plant had been swept to the floor. A single triangle of the clay pot had fractured, and lay beside a dusting of soil. "That's not going to help," Adam said calmly, but he was shaken. He wasn't sure, however, what would help. After they'd discovered Noah's bones, Gansey had called the police to find out more, but they hadn't learned much, only that Noah had been missing for 7 years. As always, Adam had urged reticence, and this time Gansey had listened, withholding their discovery of the Mustang from the police. The car would lead them to Caveswater, and that was too complicated, too public. When a knock came at the door, Adam didn't answer right away, thinking it was Noah again. But then the knock came once more, and this time Declan's voice. "Gansey!" With a sigh, Adam climbed to his feet, replacing the mint plant before going to open the door. Declan stood on the threshold in neither his Ageline Beat uniform nor his internship suit, and he seemed like a different person in his jeans, even if they were impeccably dark and expensive. He looked younger than Adam normally thought of him. "Declan, hi." "Where's Gansey?" Declan demanded. "Not here." "Oh, come on." Adam didn't like to be accused of lying. He usually had better ways of getting what he wanted. He went home for his mother's birthday. "Where's my brother?" "Not here." "Now you are lying." Adam shrugged. "Yeah, I am." Declan started past him, but Adam held out his arm, blocking the door. "Now's really not a good time. And Gansey said it wasn't a good idea for you two to talk without him around. I think he's right." Declan didn't step back. His chest pressed into Adam's arm. Adam knew only this. There was no way that Declan could speak to Ronan right now. Not if Ronan had been drinking. Not if Declan was already angry. Without Gansey here, there was sure to be a fight. That was the only thing that was important. "You're not going to fight me, are you?" Adam asked, as if he wasn't nervous. "I thought that was Ronan's thing, not yours." It worked better than Adam could have imagined. Declan immediately fell back a step. Reaching into his back pocket, Declan withdrew a folded envelope. Adam recognized the Aglionby crest on the return address. "He's getting kicked out," Declan said, stuffing the envelope toward Adam. "Gansey promised me he would turn his grades around. Well, that hasn't happened. I trusted Gansey and he let me down. When he gets back, let him know he's gotten my brother kicked out." This was more than Adam could stand. "Oh no," he said. He hoped Ronan was listening. "Ronan did that all by himself. I don't know when you both are going to see that only Ronan can keep himself in Aglionby. Someday he has to pick for himself. Until then, you're both wasting your time." But no matter how true, there was no argument that Adam Parrish could present in his Henrietta accent that would move someone like Declan. Adam refolded the envelope. Gansey was going to be sick over this. For a brief moment, Adam... Oh my god. For future reference, that was you screeching. And you're still doing it. Adam refolded the envelope. Gansey was going to be sick over this. For a brief moment, Adam considered not sharing the letter until it was too late. But then he knew he didn't have it in him. "I'll make sure this gets to him." "He's moving out," Declan said. "Remind Gansey of that. No Aglionby, no Monmouth." "Then you've killed him," Adam thought, because he couldn't imagine Ronan living under a roof with his brother. He couldn't imagine Ronan living under a roof without Gansey, period. But all he said was, "I'll tell him." Declan retreated down the stairs, and a moment later, Adam heard his car pull out of the parking lot. Adam opened the envelope and slowly read the letter inside. With a sigh, he returned to the desk and picked up the phone that sat beside the now broken mint pot. He dialed from memory. "Gansey." Okay, line break, but... Dude. You need to know that sometimes you scream like you're being murdered. And I know you're not being murdered. But it still is sometimes horrifying. I don't know if you can hear it from that, but it picked up on my microphone with how loud you were freaking the fuck out, dude. And I know what you were saying. Because I know. But yeah. And you might be able to pick it up. But, dude. I'm not worried that you're dying. But sometimes, initially, it's startling as if someone has put a horror movie scream on the speakers and decided right outside my bedroom door is the best place to put the speaker. Okay. Several hours away, Gansey was just losing interest in his mother's birthday. Adam's call had spoiled any buoyancy left in his mood, and it hadn't taken long after that for Helen and Gansey's mother to become engaged in a full-on, politely disappointed conversation that they both pretended wasn't over Helen's glassware. During a particularly tense non-exchange, Gansey put his hands in his pockets and walked out to his father's garage. Ordinarily, home, a sprawling Cotswold stone mansion outside of Washington, D.C., had a sort of nostalgic comfort to it. But today, Gansey had no patience for it. All he could think about was Noah's skeleton and Ronan's terrible grades and the trees speaking Latin. And Glendower. Glendower, lying in his fine armor, barely illuminated in the darkness of his tomb. It's kind of gay. Sorry. In Gansey's vision in the tree, he had seemed so real. Gansey had touched the dusted surface of his armor, run his fingers over the spearhead that lay beside him, blown dust off the cup curled in Glendower's armored right hand. He moved to the helmet and lowered and hovered. He'd moved to the helmet and hovered his hands over it. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the uncovering, the waking, and that was when the vision had ended. Gansey had always felt as if there were two of him. The Gansey who was in control, able to handle any situation, able to talk to anyone. And then the other, more fragile Gansey, strung out and unsure, embarrassingly earnest, driven by naive longing. That second Gansey loomed inside him now, more than ever, and he didn't like it. He punched the key code, Helen's birthday, into the pad by the garage door. Oof. The garage, as large as the house, was all stone and wood, and arched ceilings, a stable housing several thousand horses tucked under the hoods, Like Dick Gansey III, Dick Gansey II also adored old cars. But unlike Dick Gansey III, all of the elder Gansey's cars had been returned to elegant perfection by teams of restoration experts who were familiar with terms like rotisserie and Barrett-Jackson. Most had been imported from Europe, and many had right-hand drive or came with owner's manuals in foreign languages. And most important, his father's cars were all famous in some way. They'd been owned by a celebrity or been part of a movie shoot or had once been involved in a collision with a historical figure. Hello? Does he have the car that hit Princess Diana? Okay. Gansey settled on a Peugeot. I don't know how to pronounce that. Peugeot. Peugeot. The color of vanilla ice cream that had probably been owned by Lindenberg or Hitler or Marilyn Monroe. Can I say Hitler on YouTube? I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I already said it, too late. Yeah. Leaning back in the seat, his feet resting on the pedals, Gansey thumbed through the cards in his wallet and eventually dialed the school guidance counselor, Mr. Pinter. While the phone rang, he conjured up that in-control version of himself that he knew lurked inside. Mr. Pinter, I'm sorry to call you after hours, Gansey said. He ran his pile of business and credit cards over the steering wheel. The interior of the entire car reminded him a lot of his mother's kitchen mixer. The gear shift looked like it might make a serviceable meringue when it wasn't moving the car from first to second. This is Richard Gansey. Mr. Gansey, Pinter said. He took a very long time to say the syllables, during which Gansey imagined him struggling to put a face to the name. Pinter was a tidy, motivated man that Gansey called very traditional and Ronan deemed a cautionary tale. I'm calling on behalf of Ronan Lynch. Ah. Pinter didn't need any time to put a face to that name. Well, I can't really discuss the specifics of Mr. Lynch's imminent expulsion. With all due respect, Mr. Pinter, Gansey interrupted, fully aware that he was not allotting any due respect to him by doing so. I'm not sure you are aware of our specific situation. He scratched the back of his head with a credit card while he explained Ronan's fragile emotional state, the agonizing trials of sleepwalking, the affirming joys of Monmouth manufacturing, and the strides they'd made since Ronan came to live with him. Gansey concluded with a thesis statement of just how successful he was certain Ronan Lynch would be once he found a way to patch the hemorrhaging, Nile Lynch-shaped hole in his heart. I'm not entirely convinced that Mr. Lynch's future success is the kind that Agley & Bee nurtures, Pinter said. Mr. Pinter, Gansey protested, although he was inclined to agree with him on this point. He spun the knob on the window crank. Agley & Bee has an incredibly varied and complex student body. It's one of the reasons why my parents selected it for me. Really, it had been 4 hours of Google and a persuasive phone call with his father, but Pinter didn't need to know that. Mr. Gansey, I appreciate your concern for your brother, Gansey interrupted. Really, I've come to see him as a brother. And to my parents, he's a son, in every sense of the word. Emotionally, practically, fiscally. Pinter didn't say anything. Last time he visited, my father thought the Agley & Bee library looked a little sparse in the nautical history department, Gansey said. He stuck the credit card in the air vents to see how fast it would go before meeting wind resistance. He had to grab the card before it disappeared in the bowels of the car. He remarked that it looked like an $30,000 sized gap in the funding. Pinter's voice was a little deeper as he said, I don't think you understand why Mr. Lynch's time at Agley & Bee is being threatened. He utterly flaunts school regulations and seems to have nothing but contempt for his academics. We have given him leeway considering his extremely difficult personal circumstances, but he seems to forget that attending Agley & Bee Academy is a privilege, not a chore. His expulsion is meant to be effective Monday. Gansey leaned forward and rested his head against the steering wheel. Ronan, why? He said, I know he's screwing up. I know he should have been kicked out a long time ago. Just give me to the end of the school year. I can get him through his finals. He hasn't been to any classes, Mr. Gansey. I can get him through his finals. For a long moment, there was silence. Gansey heard a television playing in the background. Finally, Pinter said, he has to make B's in all of his finals, and toe the line until then, or he's out of Agley & Bee immediately. He doesn't have any more chances. Sitting up, Gansey let out his breath. Thank you, sir. Also, don't forget about your father's interest in our nautical history section. I'll be watching for it. And Ronan thought he had nothing to learn from Pinter. Gansey smiled grimly at the dashboard, though he was as far away from amused as he'd ever been. The boats have always been a big part of our life. Thanks for picking up the phone after hours. Enjoy your weekend, Mr. Gansey, Pinter replied. Gansey clicked end and tossed the phone onto the dashboard. Closing his eyes, he breathed a swear word. Gansey had dragged Ronan through his midterms. Surely he could do it again. He had to do it again. The Puget rocked as someone got into the passenger seat. For a breathless moment, Gansey thought, Noah? But then his father said, Are you being seduced by this French beauty? Does this makes your mullet car seem pretty coarse, doesn't it? Gansey opened his eyes. Beside him, his father ran a palm over the dash of the car and then inspected it for dust. He squinted at Gansey as if he could determine the state of his son's health and mental facilities merely by looking at him. It's nice, Gansey said. Not really me, though. I'm surprised your jalopy got you here, his father said. Why don't you take the Suburban back? The Camaro's okay. Smells like gasoline. Now Gansey could imagine his father pecking around the Camaro where it was parked in front of the garage, his hands behind his back as he sniffed for fluid leakage and observed nicks in the paint. It's fine, Dad. It's exemplary. I doubt that, his father said, but amiably. Richard Gansey II was rarely anything but. A lovely man, your father, the people told Gansey. Always smiling. Nothing flaps him. Such a character. This last bit was because he collected strange old things and looked in holes in walls and had a journal of things that had happened on the 14th of April every year since history began. Do you have any idea why your sister purchased that hideous bronze plate for $3,000? Is she angry at your mother? Is she trying to play a practical joke? She thought Mom would like it. It's not glass. Gansey shrugged. I tried to warn her. For a moment they sat there. His father asked, Do you want to start it up? Gansey didn't care, but he found the key in the ignition and turned it. The engine turned over immediately, springing to obedient life, nothing like the Camaro. Bay 4, open, his father said, and the garage door in front of them began to power up. When he saw Gansey's glance, he explained, I had voice controls installed. The only difficulty is that if you shout very loudly, the closest door to you will open. Obviously, that is detrimental to security. I'm working on that. We did have an attempted break-in a few weeks ago. They only made it as far as the front gate. Installed a weight-based system out there. The garage door opened on the Camaro, parked directly in front of them, blocking their exit. The pig was low and defiant and rough around the edges in comparison to the demure, self-contained, always smiling Puget. Gansey felt a sudden and irrepressible love for his car. Buying it was the best decision of his life. I never get used to that thing, Gansey's father said, eyeing the pig without malice. Once, Gansey had overheard his father saying, Why in the world did he even want that car? And his mother replying, Oh, I know why. One day he would find an opportunity to bring up that conversation with her because he wanted to know why she thought he had bought it. Analyzing what motivated him to put up with the Camaro made Gansey feel unsettled, but he knew it had something to do with how sitting in this perfectly restored Puget made him feel. A car was a wrapper for its contents, he thought, and if he looked on the inside like any of the cars in this garage looked on the outside, he couldn't live with himself. On the outside, he knew he looked a lot like his father. On the inside, he sort of wished he looked more like the Camaro, which was to say, more like Adam. That's kind of gay. His father asked, How are you doing in school? Great. What's your favorite class? World history. Good teacher? Perfectly adequate. How's your scholarship friend doing? Finding the classes harder than public school? Gansey turned the driver's side mirror so that it reflected the ceiling. Adam's doing well. He must be pretty smart. He's a genius, Gansey said, with certainty. And the Irish one? Gansey couldn't bring himself to make up a convincing lie for Ronan, not so soon after the call with Pinter. Just then, it felt very weighty to be Gansey the younger. He replied, Ronan is Ronan. It's hard for him without his father. Gansey Sr. didn't ask about Noah, and Gansey realized he couldn't remember him ever doing so. In fact, he couldn't remember ever mentioning Noah to his family at all. He wondered if the police would call his parents about him finding the body. If they hadn't already, it seemed unlikely they would. They'd given Gansey and Blue cards with the number of a counselor on it, but Gansey thought they both probably needed help of a different variety. How's the ley line hunt going? Gansey considered how much to say. I've actually made some breakthroughs that I hadn't expected. Henrietta is looking promising. So things aren't going badly. Your sister said you seemed a little melancholy. Melancholy? Helen's an idiot. His father clucked his tongue. Dick, you don't mean that. Word choice? Gansey turned off the engine and exchanged a look with his father. She bought Mom a bronze plate for her birthday. Gansey Sr. made a little noise, which meant Gansey Jr. had a point. Just so long as you're happy and keeping busy, his father said. Oh, Gansey said, retrieving his phone from the dash. Already his mind was churning over how to crunch 3 months of study into Ronan's brain, how to return Noah to his former self, how to convince Adam to leave his parents' house, even though Henrietta no longer seemed like such a dead end. What cunning thing he could say to Blue when he saw her next. I'm keeping busy. Chapter 32. Oh. It's really... the way that Maggie Steifvater writes Gansey's dynamic with his parents feels very much like talking to people that are supposed to be the most, like, important caretakers in your life, and they don't really know who you are. You know? Like, they do, but in the most surface levels of ways. And those people who are supposed to be the most important caretakers, they, like, in roles entirely, are see you, this child, and have been seeing you, this child that is in front of them, and have seen a smaller adult, you know, someone inconsequential and important enough because they mean something to you, or they're meant to mean something to you, but truly they are capable enough, like a freshly born horse, that they can walk with a little bit of time. And you as the adult can be like, oh, but they're silly because they're a kid. But you can't, it's like a mix of, you're silly because you're a kid, but you are capable enough that I don't need to pay enough attention to you to be a caretaker, despite the fact that is the role that I'm supposed to be taking in your life. And that is what I think about his parents, if that makes sense. My analysis. Yeah. Chapter 32. When Blue knocked on the door of Monmouth Manufacturing after school, Ronan answered the door. You guys weren't waiting outside, Blue said, feeling a little self-conscious. After all this time, she'd never been inside, and she felt a little like a trespasser merely by standing in the decrepit stairwell. I thought maybe you weren't here. Gansey's partying with his mother, Ronan said. He smelled like beer. And Noah's fucking dead, but Parrish is here. Ronan, let her in, Adam said. He peered at Ronan's shoulder. Hey, Blue, you've never been up here before, have you? Yeah, should I not? No, come. There was a bit of a fumble, and then Blue was inside, and the door was shut behind her, and both of the boys were watching her reaction very carefully. Blue gazed around the second floor. It looked like the home of a mad inventor, or an obsessed scholar, or a very messy explorer. After meeting Gansey, she was beginning to expect that he was all of these things. She said, What's the downstairs look like? Dust, Adam replied. He used his foot to discreetly move a pair of dirty jeans, boxers still tucked inside them, out of Blue's direct line of sight. And concrete. And more dust. And dirt. Also, said Ronan, moving off toward a pair of doors at the other end of the floor. Dust. For a moment, Ronan and Adam craned their necks, looking around the spread-out space as if they, too, were seeing it for the first time. The vast room, painted red with afternoon sun, through the dozens of window panes, was beautiful and cluttered. It reminded Blue of the feeling she had when she had first seen Gansey's journal. For the first time in days, she thought about the vision of his fingers resting on her face. Blue, kiss me. For one half of a breath, Blue closed her eyes to reset her thoughts. I have to feed Chainsaw, Ronan said, a sentence that made absolutely no sense to Blue. He disappeared into the tiny office and shut the door behind himself. An inhuman squawking noise emitted from within, which Adam didn't comment on. We're not doing anything today, obviously, Adam said. Do you want to hang out? Blue looked around for a couch. It would be easier to hang out with a couch. There was an unmade bed in the middle of the room, a very expensive-looking leather armchair, the sort with glossy brass bolts holding the leather in place, situated in front of one of the floor-to-ceiling windows, and a desk chair with papers scattered across it. No couch. Has Noah... Adam shook his head. Blue sighed. Maybe, she thought, Adam was right about Noah's body. Maybe moving it off the ley line had stolen his energy. Is he here? She asked. It feels like it. I don't know. To the empty air, she said, You can use my energy, Noah, if that's what you need. Adam's expression was enigmatic. That's brave of you. She didn't think so. If it was something that she needed to be brave about, she was certain her mother wouldn't have her long to the church watch. I like to be useful. So, do you live here too? Adam shook his head, his eyes on the spread of Henrietta outside the windows. Gansey would like me to. He likes all of his things in one place. His voice was a little bitter, and after a pause, he added, I shouldn't say things like that. He doesn't mean it badly. And it's just, this place is Gansey's. Everything in it is Gansey's. I need to be an equal, and I can't be living here. Where do you live? Adam's mouth was very set. A place made for leaving. That's not really an answer. It's not really a place. And it would be terrible to live here? She leaned her head back to gaze at the ceiling far above. The entire place smelled dusty, but in the good old way of a library or a museum. Yes, Adam replied. When I get out on my own, it will be to some place I made myself. And that's why you go to Aglinby. He leveled that gaze on her. And that's why I go to Aglinby. Even though you're not rich. He hesitated. Adam, I don't care, Blue said. Parsed on the most basic level, it wasn't really the most gutsy sentence ever said, but it felt gutsy to Blue when she said it. I know other people do, but I don't. He made a little face, and then inclined his head in the slightest of nods. Even though I'm not rich. True confession, Blue said. I'm not rich either. Adam laughed out loud at that. And she discovered that she was starting to really like this laugh that burst out of him, and seemed to surprise him every time. She was a little scared of the knowledge that she was starting to like it. He said, Oh, hey, come over here, you'll like this. The floor creaking under him, he led the way past the desks to the windows on the far side. Blue felt a sense of dizzying height here. These massive old factory windows began only a few inches above the old wide floorboards, and the first floor was much taller than the first floor of her house. Crouching, Adam began pawing through a row of cardboard file boxes that were shoved against the windows. Eventually, he dragged one of the boxes a few inches from the window and gestured for Blue to sit beside him. She did. Adam readjusted his posture so that he was more settled, his knee bone pressed against Blue's. He was not looking at her, but there was something about his posture that betrayed his awareness of her. She swallowed. These are things that Gansey's found, Adam said. Things not cool enough for museums, or things they couldn't prove were old, or things he didn't want to give away. In this box? She asked. In all the boxes. This is the Virginia box. He tipped it enough that the contents spilled between them, along with a prodigious quantity of dirt. Virginia box, huh? What are the other boxes? There is something of a little boy in his smile. Wales and Peru and Australia and Montana and other strange places. Blue took a forked stick from the pile. Is this another dowsing rod? Though she had never used one, she knew some psychics used them as a tool to focus their intuition and to lead them in the direction of lost items or dead bodies or hidden bodies of water. A low-tech version of Gansey's fancy EMF reader. I guess might just be a stick. Adam showed her an old Roman coin. She used it to scrape some ages-old dust off a tiny sculpted stone dog. The dog was missing a back leg. The jagged wound revealed some stone lighter than the rest of the grubby surface. He looks a little hungry, Blue commented. The stylized dog sculpture reminded her of the raven carved into the side of the hill, head bent back, body elongated. Adam picked up a stone with a hole in it and looked at her through it. The shape of it perfectly covered the last remnants of his bruise. Blue selected a matching stone and looked at him through its matching hole. One side of his face was red with the afternoon light. Why are these in the box? Water bored these holes, Adam said. Seawater, but he found them in the mountains. I think he said they matched some of the stones he found in the UK. He was still looking at her through the hole, the stone making a strange eyeglass. She watched his throat move, and then he reached out and touched her face. You sure are pretty, he said. It's the stone, she replied immediately. Her skin felt warm. His fingertip touched just the very edge of her mouth. It's very flattering. Adam gently pulled the stone out of her hand and set it on the floorboards between them. Through his fingers, he threaded one of the flyaway hairs by her cheek. My mother used to say, don't throw compliments away so long as they're free. His face was very earnest. But that one wasn't meant to cost you anything, Blue. Blue plucked at the hem at the hem on her dress, but she didn't look away from him. I don't know what to say when you say things like that. You can tell me if you want me to keep saying them. She was torn by the desire to encourage him and the fear of where it would lead. I like when you say things like that. Adam asked, but what? I didn't say but. You meant to. I heard it. She looked at his face, fragile and strange under the bruise. It was easy to read him as shy or uncertain, she thought, but he wasn't really quite either. Noah was, but Adam was just quiet. He wasn't lost for words. He was observing. But knowing those things about him didn't help her answer the question. Should she tell him about the danger of a kiss? It had been so much easier to tell Gansey when it felt like it didn't really matter. The last thing she wanted to do was scare Adam off by tossing around phrases like true love right after she'd met him. But if she didn't say anything, there was a chance that he might steal a kiss, and then they'd both be in trouble. I like it when you say those things, but I'm afraid you'll kiss me, Blue admitted. Already this seemed like an untenable path to set off on. When he didn't immediately say anything, she hurried, "We just met, and I'm very young." Halfway through, she lost her nerve to explain the prediction, but she wasn't sure what part of her felt this was a better confession to blurt out. "I'm very young." She winced. That seems, Adam sought words, very sensible. The precise adjective Neve had found for Blue that very first week. So she truly was sensible. This was distressing. She felt like she'd done so much work to appear as eccentric as possible, and still, when it came down to it, she was sensible. Both Adam and Blue looked up at the sound of footsteps crossing the floor toward them. It was Ronan, holding something under his arm. He cautiously lowered himself until he sat cross-legged beside Adam, and then sighed heavily, as if he had been part of the conversation to this point, and it tired him. Blue was equal parts relieved and disappointed at his presence, effectively ending any more talk about kissing. "Do you want to hold her?" Ronan asked. That was when Blue discovered that the thing that Ronan was holding was alive. For a brief moment, Blue was actually incapable of doing anything but contemplating the irony that one of the Raven boys actually possessed a raven. By then, it was clear that Ronan had decided the answer was no. "What are you doing?" Blue asked as he withdrew his hand. "I want to." She wasn't exactly sure that she did. The raven was not quite done looking, but it was a matter of principle. She realized, again, that she was trying to impress Ronan only because he was impossible to impress. But she comforted herself that at least all she was doing in pursuit of his approval was holding a baby bird. Ronan carefully bundled the raven into her cupped palms. The little bird felt like she weighed nothing at all, and her skin and feathers felt humid where they'd been in contact with Ronan's hands. The raven tipped her huge head back and goggled at Blue and then Adam, beak cracked. "What's her name?" Blue asked. Holding her was frightening and lovely. She was such a small, tenuous little life, her pulse tapping rapidly against Blue's skin. Adam answered witheringly, "Chainsaw." The raven opened her beak wide, goggling even more than before. "She wants you again," Blue said, because it was clear that she did. Ronan accepted the bird and stroked the feathers on the back of her head. "You look like a supervillain with your familiar," Adam said. Ronan's smile cut his face, but he looked kinder than Blue had ever seen him, like the raven in his hand was his heart, finally laid bare. They all heard a door open on the other side of the room. Adam and Blue looked at each other. Ronan ducked his head just a little, as if he was waiting for a blow. No one said anything as Noah settled down in the gap left between Ronan and Blue. He looked as Blue remembered him, his shoulders hunched forward, his hands restlessly moving from place to place. The ever-present smudge on his face was clearly where his cheek had been smashed in. The longer she stared at him, the more certain she became that she was at once seeing his dead body and his live one. That smudge was her brain's way of reconciling those facts. Adam was the first to say something. "Noah," he said. He lifted his fist. After a pause, Noah bumped knuckles with him. Then he rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm feeling better," he said, as if he'd been ill instead of dead. The things from the box were still spread out all over the floor between them. He began to sort through them. He picked up something that looked like a carved bit of bone. It must have had a larger pattern on it once, but now all that was left was something that looked like the edge of an acanthus leaf, and possibly some raised scrolling. Noah held it against his throat like an amulet. His eyes were averted from either of the two boys, but his knee touched Blue's. "I want you to know," Noah said, pressing the carved bone against his Adam's apple, hard as if it would squeeze the words from him. I was more when I was alive. Adam chewed his lip, looking for a response. Blue thought she knew what he meant, though. Noah's resemblance to the crookedly smiling photo on the driver's license, Gansey had discovered, was akin to a photocopy's resemblance to an original painting. She couldn't imagine the Noah she knew driving that tricked-out Mustang. You're old enough now, Blue said. I missed you. With a wan smile. Wayne. W-A-N. Is that how you pronounce it? With a wan smile, Noah reached over and petted Blue's hair, just like he used to. She could barely feel his fingers. Ronan said, Hey, man. All those times you wouldn't give me notes because you said I should go to my classes. You never went to any classes. But you did, didn't you, Noah? Blue interrupted, thinking of the Aglanby badge they'd found with his body. You were an Aglanby student. Are, Noah said. Were, Ronan said. You don't go to classes. Neither do you, Noah replied. And he's about to be a were, too. Adam broke in. Okay, Blue shouted, her hands in the air. She was starting to feel a deep sensation of cold as Noah pulled energy from her. The last thing she wanted to do was get completely drained like she had at the churchyard. The police said you've been missing 7 years. Does that seem right? Noah blinked at her, vague and alarmed. I can't. Blue held her hand out. Take it. When I'm at readings with my mom, she needs to get focused. She holds my hand. Maybe it will help. Hesitant, Noah reached out. When he laid his palm against hers, she was shocked by how chilled it was. It was not merely cold, but somehow empty as well, skin without a pulse. Noah, please don't die for real. That's written in italics, so it's a thought. He let out a heaving sigh. God, he said, and his voice sounded different from before. Now it sounded closer to the Noah she knew, the Noah who had passed as one of them. Blue knew she wasn't the only one to notice it, because Adam and Ronan exchanged sharp glances. She watched his chest rise and fall, his breaths coming more even. She hadn't really noticed before if he'd been breathing at all. Noah shut his eyes. He still held the carved bones loosely in his other hand, rested palm up on his topsiders. I can remember my grades, the date on them, 7 years ago. 7 years. The police had been right. They were talking to a boy who had been dead for 7 years. The same year Gansey was stung by hornets, Adam said softly. Then he said, You will live because of Glendower. Someone else on the ley line is dying when they should not, and so you will live when you should not. Coincidence, Ronan said, because it wasn't. Noah's eyes were still closed. It was supposed to do something to the ley line. I don't remember what he said it was supposed to do. Wake it up, Adam suggested. Noah nodded, his eyelids still pressed closed. Blue's entire arm felt chilled and numb. Yeah, that. I didn't care. It was always his deal, and I was just going along with him because it was something to do. I didn't know he was going to... This is the ritual Gansey was talking about, Adam said to Ronan. Someone did try it, with a sacrifice as the symbolic way to touch the line. You were the sacrifice, weren't you, Noah? Someone killed you for this. My face, Noah said softly, and he turned his head away, pressing his ruined cheek into his shoulder. I can't remember when I stopped being alive. Blue shuddered. The late afternoon light bathing the boys and the floor was spring, but it felt like winter in her bones. But it didn't work, Ronan said. I almost woke Capeswater, Noah whispered. We were close enough to do that. It wasn't for nothing, but I'm glad he never found that. He doesn't know. He doesn't know where it is. Blue shivered unconsciously, a product of both Noah's cold hand in hers and the horror of the story. She wondered if this was what it felt like for her mother and her aunts and her mother's friends when they were doing a seance or a reading. Do they hold hands with dead people? She had thought dead was something more permanent, or at least something more obviously not alive, but Noah seemed unable to be either. Ronan said, Okay, it's time to stop fucking around. Who did it, Noah? In Blue's grip, Noah's hand trembled. Seriously, man, spill it. I'm not asking you for notes. I'm asking who smashed your head in. When Noah said it, there was something angry and honorable about it. When Ronan said it, there was something angry and honorable about it. But it was an anger that included Noah, too, that somehow made him culpable. There was humiliation in his voice when Noah answered, We were friends. Adam said, rather more ferocious than he'd been a moment before, A friend wouldn't kill you. You don't understand, Noah whispered. Blue was afraid that he would disappear. This, she understood, had been a secret carried inside him for 7 years, and he still didn't want to confess it. He was upset. He'd lost everything. If he'd been thinking straight, I don't think he would have. He didn't mean to. We were friends, like... Are you afraid of Gansey? The boys didn't answer. They didn't have to. Whatever Gansey was to them, it was bulletproof. Again, though, Blue saw the shame flit across Adam's expression. Whatever had transpired between the two of them in his vision, it was still worrying at him. Come on, Noah. A name. This was Ronan, head cocked, keen as his raven. Who killed you? Lifting his head, Noah opened his eyes. He took his hand out of Blue's and put it in his lap. The air was frigid around all of them. The raven was hunched far down into Ronan's lap. He held one hand over the top of her protectively. Noah said, But you already know. Chapter 33. Princess. Do you already know? Do you? Do we? Do you? Princess. Oh my god. My back. Chapter 33. It was dark by the time Gansey left his parents' house. He was full of restless, dissatisfied energy that always seemed to move into his heart after he visited his home these days. It had something to do with the knowledge that his parents' house wasn't truly home anymore, if it had ever been, and something to do with the realization that they hadn't changed. He had. Gansey rolled down the window and stuck his hand out as he drove. The radio had stopped working, and so the only music was the engine. The Camaro was louder after dark. The conversation with Pinter gnawed at Gansey. Bribery. So that's what it had come to. He felt this feeling inside him was shame. No matter how hard he tried, he kept becoming a Gansey. But how else was he supposed to keep Ronan in Aglinby and at Monmouth? He went over the talking points for his future conversation with Ronan, and all of them sounded like things Ronan wouldn't listen to. Was it so hard for him to go to class? How hard could it be to make it through just another year of school? He still had a half hour to go until he got to Henrietta. At a tiny town that consisted only of an artificially bright gas station, Gansey got caught at a traffic light that turned red for invisible cross traffic. All Ronan had to do was go to class, do the reading, get the grade, and then he was free, and he had his money from Declan, and he could do whatever the hell he wanted. Gansey checked his phone. No signal. He wanted to talk to Adam. The breeze through the open window scented the interior of the car with leaves and water, growing things and secret things. More than anything, Gansey wanted to spend more time in Cabeswater, but class would take up much of the coming week. There would be no cutting for either of them after the talk with Pinter, and after school he had to drag Ronan through his homework. The world was opening up in front of Gansey, and Noah needed him, and Glendower seemed like a possibility again, and instead of going out there and seizing the chance, Gansey had to babysit. Damn, Ronan. The light turned green. Gansey punched the accelerator so hard that the tires squealed and smoked. The pig exploded off the line. Damn, Ronan. Gansey punched his way through the gears. Fast, fast, fast. The engine drowned out the pound of his heart. Damn, Ronan. The needle climbed on the speedometer, touched the red warning area. Gansey hit the speed limit. The car had plenty more. The engine did well in this cool air, and it was fast and uncomplicated, and he wanted badly to see what would happen in the rest of the gears. He checked himself, heaving a ragged sigh. If he had been Ronan, he would have kept going. The thing about Ronan was that he had no limits, no fears, no boundaries. If Gansey had been Ronan, he would have crushed the gas pedal to the floor until the road or a cop or a tree stopped him. He would cut class tomorrow to go to the forest. He'd tell Ronan it was his problem that he was getting expelled. He would have cared if he would have cared about him at all. Gansey didn't know how to be that person. Beneath him, the Camaro abruptly shuddered. Gansey let off the gas and stared at all the badly lit gauges, but nothing stood out to him. A moment later, the car shuddered, and Gansey knew he was done for. He just had time to find a fairly flat place to pull off when the engine went dead, just as it had on St. Mark's Day. As he coasted off the abandoned road, he tried the key, but there was nothing. Gansey allowed himself the meager pleasure of a breathed-out swear word, the very worst he had knowledge of. And then he climbed out of the car and opened the hood. Adam had taught him the basics, changing spark plus, draining oil. Oh, plugs, not plus. I can't read. If there had been a belt hanging loose or a newly jagged hose end jutting from the bowels of the car, he might have been able to fix it. As it was, the engine was an enigma. He removed his phone from his back pocket and discovered that he had merely a sliver of reception, enough to taunt him but not enough to place a call. Gansey walked around the car a few times, his phone held above his head like Lady Liberty. Nothing. Somewhat bitterly, Gansey recalled his father's suggestion that he take the Suburban back. He wasn't certain how much distance he'd covered since the gas station at the light, but it felt like he must be closer to the edge of Henrietta. If he started to walk toward town, he might get reception before he found a gas station. Maybe he should just stay put. Sometimes when the pig stopped, it would start working again after the engine cooled down a little. But he was too restless to sit. He had barely finished locking the car, however, when headlights pulled in behind the Camaro, blinding him. Turning his face away, Gansey heard a car door slam and footsteps crunch in the loose fill by the highway. For a blink, the figure in front of him was unfamiliar, a homunculus instead of a man. Then Gansey recognized him. He said, "Mr. Welk?" Barrington Welk wore a dark-colored jacket and running shoes, and there was something strange and intense about the oversized features of his face. It was as if he needed to ask a question, but he couldn't find the words. He didn't ask, "Car trouble?" or "Mr. Gansey," or any of the things Gansey thought he might say. Instead, he licked his lips and said, "I want that book of yours, and you'd better give me your cell phone, too." Gansey thought he must have misheard him. He asked, "Excuse me?" Welk produced a small, impossibly real-looking handgun from the pocket of his dark jacket. "That book you bring to class, and your cell phone. Hurry up." It was somehow difficult to process the fact of the gun. It was hard to go from the idea that Barrington Welk was creepy in a way that was entertaining to joke about with Ronan and Adam to the idea that Barrington Welk had a gun and was pointing it at Gansey. "Well, okay." Gansey blinked. "Okay." There didn't seem to be anything else to say. He preferred his life to nearly all his possessions, with the impossible exception of the Camaro, and Welk hadn't asked for that. Gansey handed his cell phone to Welk. "My journal's in the car," he explained. "Get it." Welk pointed the pistol at Gansey's face. Gansey unlocked the Camaro. The last time he had seen Welk, he'd been turning in a quiz about fourth declension Latin nouns. "Don't think about trying to take off in that," Welk said. It hadn't occurred to Gansey that if the Camaro had been operating properly, fleeing would have been an option. "I also want to know where you've been going this week," Welk said. "Pardon?" Gansey asked politely. He had been rummaging in the back seat for the journal, and the crinkling papers had drowned Welk's voice out. "Don't push me," Welk snapped. "The police called the school. I can't believe it. After 7 years. Now there's going to be a million questions. It's only going to take them 2 seconds to answer a lot of those questions with my name. This is all on you. 7 years and I thought I'm screwed. You've screwed me." As Gansey emerged from the Camaro, his journal in his hands, he realized what Welk was saying. Noah. This man in front of him had killed Noah. Gansey was beginning to feel something somewhere in his gut. It still didn't feel like fear. It was something strung out like a rope bridge, barely supporting weight. It was a suspicion that nothing else in Gansey's life had ever been real except for this moment. "Mr. Welk, tell me where you've been." "Up the mountains near Nethers," Gansey said, his voice remote. It was the truth, and in any case, it didn't matter if he lied or not. He'd entered the GPS coordinates into the journal he was about to hand over. "What did you find? Did you find Glendower?" Gansey flinched, and the flinch surprised him. Somehow he'd convinced himself this was about something else, something more logical, and the sound of Glendower's name shocked him. "No," Gansey replied. "We found a carving in the ground." Welk held his hand out for the journal. Gansey swallowed. He asked, "Welk, sir, are you sure this is the only way?" There was a soft, unmistakable click. It was a sound that had been made recognizable by hours of action-adventure movies and video games. Though Gansey had never heard it in person before, he knew exactly what sound a pistol made when the safety was taken off. Welk placed the barrel of the gun on Gansey's forehead. "No," Welk said. "This is the other way." Gansey had that same detached feeling that he'd had in Monmouth manufacturing looking at the Wasp. At once he saw the reality, a gun pressed against the skin above his eyebrows, so cold as to feel sharp, and also the possibility. Welk's finger pulling back, a bullet burrowing into his skull, death instead of finding a way to get back to Henrietta. The journal weighted his hands. He didn't need it. He knew everything in it. But it was him. He was giving everything that he'd worked for away. "I will get a new one." "If you'd just asked," Gansey said, "I would have told you everything in there. I would have been happy to. It wasn't a secret." The handgun trembled against Gansey's forehead. Welk said, I can't believe that you're saying anything when I have a gun to your head. I can't believe you would bother to say that." "That's how," replied Gansey. "You know it's the truth." He let Welk take the journal from him.
You disgust me, Wilkes said, holding the book to his chest. You think you're invincible. Guess what? So did I. When he said that, Gansey knew Wilk was going to kill him. There was no way that someone could have that much hatred and bitterness in his voice while holding a gun and not pull the trigger. Wilk's face tensed. For a moment, there was no time, just the space between when one breath escaped and another rushed in. 7 months before, Ronan had taught Gansey how to throw a hook. Hit with your body, not just your fist. Look where you're punching, elbow at 90 degrees. Don't think about how much it'll hurt. Gansey, I told you, don't think about how much it will hurt. He swung. Gansey forgot nearly everything Ronan had told him, but he remembered to look, and it was only that and luck that knocked the gun into the gravel by the road. Welk bellowed a wordless shout. They both dove for the gun. Gansey, stumbling onto one knee, kicked blindly in the direction of it. He heard his foot connect with something first. Welk's arm first, then something more solid. The gun skittered in the direction of the car's rear wheels, and Gansey scrabbled around the far side of the Camaro. The light from Welk's headlights didn't reach to this side. His only thought was to find cover, to be still in the darkness. There was silence on the other side of the car. Struggling to keep his gasping breaths in check, Gansey laid his cheek against the warm metal of the pig. His thumb throbbed where he'd hit the gun. Don't breathe. By the road, Welk swore again and again. The gravel crunched as he crouched by the car. He couldn't find the gun. He swore again. In the far-off distance, an engine hummed. Another car, possibly coming this way. A rescuer, or at least a witness. For a moment, Welk was completely silent, and then, abruptly, he broke into a run, his footsteps softening as he made it back to his own car. Ducking his head, Gansey peered under the body of the pig, which was ticking as it cooled down. He saw the slender silhouette of the gun between the rear tires, illuminated from behind Welk's headlights. He wasn't sure if Welk was retreating or going for a flashlight. Gansey backed farther into the darkness. Then he waited there, his heart crashing in his ears, grass scraping at his cheek. Welk's car charged onto the highway, roaring toward Henrietta. The other car passed by right after, oblivious. Gansey lay in the grass of the ditch for a long time, listening to the humming of insects in the trees around him and the breathing sounds the pig made as the engine settled. His thumb was really starting to hurt where he'd hit the gun. Really, he'd gotten off light. But still, it hurt. In his journal, he felt raw, the chronicle of his fiercest desires stripped away from him by force. After Welk's car failed to return, Gansey climbed to his feet and went around to the other side of the Camaro. He got down onto his knees and crawled as far under the car as he could manage, hooking the edge of the gun with his good thumb. Gingerly, he put the safety back on. He could hear Blue's voice when they found Noah's body. Fingerprints. Gansey, moving as in a dream, opened the car door and dropped the gun on the passenger seat. It felt like another night, another car, another person had left his parents' house. He closed his eyes and turned the key. The pig coughed and coughed, but then the engine caught. He opened his eyes. Nothing about the nights looked the same as before. He turned on his headlights and then drove back onto the road. Pressing the gas pedal, he tested the engine. It held, no stutters. Slamming down the accelerator, he raced toward Henrietta. Welk had killed Noah, and he knew his cover was blown. Wherever he was heading next, he had nothing left to lose. Chapter 34. Do you feel it? Do you feel it deep inside your soul, princess? Princess! Okay. Are you ready? I start, gnawing on this book. Well, my phone, but this book. Okay, but... Yes, chapter 34. Are you prepared? I'm not. Driving fast in a car over the speed limit. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Well, it was kind of not deep, but, Blue had never been a big fan of the attic, even before Neve moved in. Numerous slanting roof lines provided dozens of opportunities to hit your head on a sloped ceiling. Unfinished wood floorboards and areas patched with prickly plywood were unfriendly to bare feet. Summer turned the attic into an inferno. Moreover, there generally was nothing up there but dust and wasps. Maura was a die-hard not collector, and so anything unused was forced upon neighbors or Goodwill. There was really no reason to visit the attic, until now. As it grew late, Blue had left Ronan, Adam, and Noah behind to discuss if it was possible to implicate their Latin teacher in Noah's death, if the police had not already established a link.
Adam had called only 5 minutes after she'd gotten home to tell her that Noah had vanished the instant she'd left. So it was true. She really was the table at Starbucks everyone wanted. I think we have an hour, Kala said, as Blue opened the attic door. They should be back around 11. Let me go first, in case. Blue raised an eyebrow. What is it you're thinking she has up here? I don't know. Ferrets? Don't be ridiculous. Wizards? Kala eased by Blue and began to climb the stairs. The single light bulb that illuminated the attic didn't reach far down the stairs. That's more likely. Oh, it smells. That's the ferrets. From her vantage point, farther up. Oh my god. Hold on. My microphone is falling. Queen. From her vantage point farther up the stairs, Kala shot Blue a look that Blue suspected was more dangerous than anything they'd find in the attic. Kala was right, however. The air that moved slowly around them was rather malodorous. Blue couldn't place the scent, though it hinted at familiar things like rotting onions and feet. Smells like sulfur, Blue said, or a dead body. Thinking of the horrid voice coming from Neve's mouth before, she wouldn't be surprised by it either. Smells like asafoetida, Kala corrected grimly. What's that? Either something that is delicious in curry or something that is very useful in witchcraft. Blue tried to breathe through her mouth. It was hard to imagine something that smelled so convincingly of a dead person's feet being delicious in anything. Which do you think it is? Kala had reached the top of the stairs. Not curry, she said. Now that Blue stood at the top of the stairs, she could see that Neve had transformed the attic into something quite different from what she remembered. A mattress covered with throw rugs lay directly on the floor. Around the room, unlit candles of different heights, dark bowls, and glasses of water were gathered in groups. Bright painter's tape made patterns on the floor between some of the objects. Beside Blue's feet, a half-burned plant stalk rested on a plate dusted with ashes. In one of the narrow dormers, 2 full-length footed mirrors faced each other, reflecting mirrored images back and forth at each other in perpetuum. Also, it was cold. The attic should not have been cold after the day's heat. Don't touch anything, Kala told Blue, which Blue found ironic considering why they'd come. Blue didn't touch anything, but she did walk farther into the room, peering at a small statue of a woman with eyes in her belly. The entire room was giving her a crawling feeling. She must be making a lot of curry. Behind them, the stairs creaked, and both Kala and Blue leapt. May I come up? Persephone asked. It was an irrelevant question as she was already up, quote-unquote up. Wearing a lace frock Blue had made her, she stood at the top of the stairs. Her hair was tied up tightly, which signaled that she was not afraid to get her hands dirty. Persephone, Kala thundered. She'd gotten over her shock was now merely angry at being shocked. You should make some noise when you enter rooms. I did let the stairs squeak, Persephone pointed out. Mora said she'll be back at midnight, so be done by then. She knows? This was both Blue and Kala in unison. Persephone crouched to look at a black leather mask with a long pointed beak. You didn't think she believed you about the dwarf movie, did you? Kala and Blue exchanged a look. Blue Blue mused over what this meant. That Mora wanted to know more about Neve as much as they did. Blue asked, Before we start, are you going to explain why Neve said she was here in Henrietta? Kala moved around the room, rubbing her hands together as if she were either warming herself or planning what to pick up first. That's quite simple. Your mother had her out here to find her father. Well, Persephone corrected, that is not quite true. Mora told me Neve approached her first. Neve said she might be able to find him. Out of the blue? Kala asked. I'd prefer it if you didn't use that expression, Blue said. Out of nowhere? Kala repeated. She picked up a candle. That seems strange. Blue crossed her arms. I'm still missing a lot of details here. Kala switched the candle from her left hand to her right. Basically, your father showed up 18 years ago, swept Mora off her feet, made her an absolutely useless friend for a year, got her pregnant, and then vanished after you were born. He was cagey and cute, so I assumed he was trailer park trash with a police record. Kala, Persephone admonished. It doesn't bother me, Blue replied. How could she be bothered by a stranger's past? I just want to know the facts. Persephone shook her head. Do you have to be so sensible? Blue shrugged. She asked Kala, What's that candle telling you? Holding the candle out from her body, Kala squinted. Just that it was used for a scrying spell, locating objects, which is what I'd expect. As Kala rummaged through things, Blue thought about what she'd just learned about her father and found she still maintained her unreasonable fondness for him. She was also pleased that he'd been cute. She said, I heard Mom telling Neve that the search was meant to be like looking him up online. That sounds true, Kala said. It was just curiosity. It's not as if she's been pining for him. Oh, Persephone murmured. I don't know about that. This made Blue's ears prick with interest. Wait, you think my mother is still in love with... Does he have a name? Puppy, replied Kala, and Persephone giggled, clearly recalling memories of Mora insensible with love. I refuse to believe Mom ever called some man Puppy, Blue said. Oh, but she did. Also, lover. Kala picked up an empty bowl. There was a crust in the bottom as if it had once held a liquid with some body to it, like pudding or blood. And butternut. You are making that up. Blue was ashamed for her mother. Persephone, a little red from trying not to laugh, shook her head. Large hanks of her hair had escaped from her knot, making her look as if she had escaped a tornado. I'm afraid not. Why would you even call someone? Turning to Blue with extremely jagged eyebrows, Kala said, Use your imagination. And Persephone exploded into helpless laughter. Blue crossed her arms. Oh, really? Her seriousness only served to dissolve any self-control the two women had left. Laughing uncontrollably, they began to trade other pet names Mora had apparently coined 18 years earlier. Ladies, Blue said sternly, we only have 45 minutes. Kala, touch that. She pointed to the mirrors. Of all the odd things in the room, she found them the creepiest, and that seemed as good a reason as any to try them. Swallowing a laugh, Kala stepped over to the mirrors. There was something unnerving about the utter impracticality of two reflecting surfaces pointed only at each other. Don't stand between them, Persephone warned. I'm not an idiot, Kala replied. Blue asked, why not stand between them? Who knows what she's doing with them? I don't want my soul put in a bottle in some other dimension or something. Kala gripped the edge of the closest mirror, careful to stand out of the view of the other. Frowning, she pawed a hand toward Blue. Blue obligingly stepped forward and allowed Kala to press her fingers over her shoulder. A moment later, quiet but for the insects outside the window. Our little Neve is quite ambitious, Kala growled finally, tightening her fingers on both Blue and the mirror's edge. Apparently her level of fame is not enough for her. Television programs are for nobodies. Don't be sarcastic, Kala, Persephone said. Tell us what you see. I see her wearing that black mask over there, standing in between these mirrors. I must be seeing her back wherever she came from, because she has 4 mirrors, 2 other larger ones behind each of these. I can see her in each of the 4 mirrors, and she's wearing the mask in all of them, but she looks different in each one. She's thinner in one of them, she's wearing black in one, her skin looks wrong in a different one. I'm not sure what they are. They might be possibilities. Kala stopped. Blue felt a little chill at the idea of 4 different Neves. Bring me the mask. No, not you, Blue. Stay here. Persephone? Persephone gingerly retrieved the mask. Again, there was a pause as Kala read the object, her knuckles pressed white. She was disappointed when she bought this, Kala said. She got in a bad review, I think, of one of her books, or to one of her shows. No, she'd seen numbers for one or the other, and they were disappointing. I definitely see the numbers, and that's what she's imagining when she buys this. She was comparing herself to Layla Polotsky. Who's that? Blue asked. A psychic more famous than Neve, Kala said. I didn't know that was possible, Blue replied. A television show and 4 books seemed more famous than any psychic could hope for in a disbelieving world. Oh, it's very possible, Kala asked. Ask Persephone. I don't know about that, Persephone said. Blue wasn't sure if she was talking about being famous or about asking her. Kala blew onward. Anyway, our woman Neve wishes she could travel the world and get some respect, and this mask helps her visualize that. What's this have to do with her being here? Blue asked. I don't know yet. I need a better object. Kala released the mirror and returned the mask to its hook on the wall. They poked about the room. Blue found a switch made of 3 sticks tied together with a red ribbon and a red mask to match the black one. Near the window, she found the source of the hideous smell, a little cloth bag with something sewed into it. She gave the bag to Kala, who held it for just a moment before saying dismissively, That's the acephida. Asafoetida. Fucking hell. That's the asafoetida. It's just a protection charm. She got spooked by a dream and made it. Crouching, Persephone hovered her hands over one of the bowls. The way she held her palms out, fingers barely moving, reminded Blue of Gansey holding his hand out over the shallow pool water in Cape's water. Persephone said, I don't know if it's Cape's water, or Cape's water, but I'm going to say Cape's water. Persephone said, there is quite a lot of uncertainty in all of this, isn't there? That's what I feel. Perhaps it's quite as simple as this. She did come to help Mora, but is getting a little carried away by Henrietta. Because of the corpse road? Asked Blue. I caught her crying in the middle of the night, and she told me the corpse road made it easy to be psychic here. Kala sneered before turning to rummage in the things beside the bed. Easier and harder, Persephone said. It's got a lot of energy, so it's like having you in the room all the time, but it's like your boys. It's quite loud. My boys, Blue thought, first in a huff, then flattered, then in a huff again. Persephone asked, Kala, what are you finding out? Kala's back was to them as she replied, 11 months ago, a man called Neve on her phone to ask her if he could bring her to Henrietta, Virginia for an all-expenses-paid trip. While she was there, she was supposed to use any means at her disposal to pinpoint a ley line and a place of power that he knew was close by but couldn't find. She told him she wasn't interested, but decided upon further thought that she might investigate this possibility on her own. She guessed Mora might let her stay in town if she came offering to help locate her old boyfriend. Persephone and Blue wore matching astonished expressions. That's amazing, Blue said. Kala turned around. She was holding a small notebook, which she waved at them. That is Neve's day planner. Oh, technology, Persephone sighed. I thought I heard a car. I'll be right back. While Persephone padded down the stairs as silently as she'd climbed them, Blue sidled over to Kala, hooking her chin onto Kala's shoulder so she could catch a glimpse for herself. Where does it say all that? Kala flipped back through the pages of Neve's handwriting and showed her the pages of mundane notes on appointment times, publishing deadlines and lunch dates. Then she flipped back to the notes for the call with the Henrietta man. It was all as Kala had said, with one notable exception. Neve had also jotted down the man's name and phone number. Every muscle in Blue's body went slack, because the name of the man who had called Neve all those months ago was a rather peculiar one that Blue, by now, knew quite well. Barrington Welk. Behind them, the single stair creaked again. Persephone said something that was a bit like, ahem. That was a little sinister, Kala said, turning. Persephone's hands were clasped before her. I have 2 pieces of bad news. She turned to Blue. First of all, your Raven boys are here, and one of them seems to have broken his thumb on a gun. Behind Persephone, there was another creak as a second person climbed the stairs. Blue and Kala both twitched a little as Neve appeared beside Persephone, her gaze eternal and unwavering. Secondly, Persephone added, Neve and Mora came home early. Chapter 35. I love the delivery of bad news. Girl, you could have had a little bit more haste. But you didn't. At all. I love it. It's so... Okay. Chapter 35. Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, Barrington Welk. The man who killed Noah. The man who just robbed Gansey. And also the man that theoretically got Neve to come here. And also the man of whose perspective we've been having. Okay, stop it. Stop it. Are you prepared emotionally? Chapter 35. The kitchen was quite full. It had never been a large kitchen to start with, and by the time 3 boys, 4 women, and 1 Blue were in it, it felt like it hadn't been made with enough floor. Adam was polite, helping Persephone make tea for everyone in the room, though he had to keep asking, where are the mugs? And now where are the spoons? What about the sugar? Ronan more than made up for Adam's calm, though. He took up enough space for 3 people with his restless pacing. Orla came down for the gossip, but stared so admiringly at Ronan that Kala yelled at her to leave and give everyone more space. Neve and Gansey sat at the breakfast table. Adam and Ronan looked just as they had when Blue had seen them last, but Gansy's eyes were different. She spent a minute too long trying to figure out what was different. It was a combination, she decided, between them being a little brighter and the skin around them being a little tighter. His arm stretched out across the table in front of him. His thumb was splinted. "Could someone cut this hospital bracelet off?" he asked. There was something gallant and hectic about the deliberate, offhand way he asked it. "I feel like an invalid, please." King, don't say that. Please. Not the, saying please is good. Maybe don't. Okay. Handing him a pair of scissors, Persephone remarked, "Blue, I did tell you about putting your thumb outside of your fist if you were going to hit someone." "You didn't tell me to tell him," Blue retorted. "Okay," Mara said from the doorway, rubbing her forehead with her fingers. "There are a few things going on here. Obviously, someone just tried to kill you." This was to Gansey. "You two are telling me that your friend was killed by the man who just tried to kill him." This was to Ronan and Adam. "You three are telling me that Neve had a phone call with the man who killed your friend and just now tried to kill Gansey." This was to Blue, Persephone, and Kala. "And you're telling me you've had nothing to do with him since that phone call." Last one was to Neve. Though Mora had spoken to each of them, they all kept looking at Neve. "And you let them go through my things," Neve replied. Blue expected her mother to look chastened, but instead, Mora seemed to grow taller. "And with good reason, obviously. I can't believe you didn't tell me the truth. If you wanted to play around on the corpse road, why didn't you just ask? How do you know I would have said no? Instead, you pretended like you were actually committed to..." She paused and looked at Blue. Blue finished, "To finding Butternut?" "Oh, God," Mora said. "Kala, this is your fault, isn't it?" "No," Blue said. She had to try very hard to pretend that the boys weren't all looking at her in order to say this. "I think I can be mad here, too. Why didn't you just tell me that you didn't really know my father and you had me without getting married? Why is that a big secret?" "I never said I didn't really know him," Mora replied, voice hollow. She had an expression on her face that Blue didn't like. It was a little too emotional. Blue looked at Persephone instead. "How do you know I wouldn't have just been happy with the truth? I don't care if my father was a deadbeat named Butternut. It doesn't change anything right now." "His name wasn't really Butternut, was it?" Gansey asked Adam in a low voice. Neve's voice, mild as always, cut through the kitchen. "I think this has all been oversimplified. I was spending time looking for Blue's father. It's just not all I was looking at." Kala snapped. "Then why all the secretive behavior?" Neve looked very pointedly at Gansey's splinted thumb. "It is the sort of discovery that lends itself to danger. Surely you all feel the pull of secrecy as well, or you would have shared everything you knew with Blue." "Blue is not psychic," Mora said crisply. "Most of what we didn't pass along were things that would only be meaningful while doing a reading or scrying into the corpse road." "You also didn't tell me," Gansey said. He was looking at his thumb, his eyebrows pulled together. Suddenly, Blue realized what looked different about him. He was wearing a pair of wire-framed glasses. They were the thin, subdued sort of glasses that you usually didn't notice until they were pointed out. They made him look at once older and more serious, or maybe that was just his expression in general at the moment. Though she would never ever tell him, she preferred this Gansey to the wind-tossed, effortlessly handsome one. He went on, "At least at the reading, when I asked about the ley line, you withheld that information from me." Now, Mora looked a little chastised. "How was I supposed to know what you would do with it? So, where is this man now? Barrington? Is that really his name?" "Barrington Welk," Adam and Ronan replied in unison. They exchanged a wry look. "At the hospital, the police told me they're looking for him. Henrietta Police and State Police," Gansey said. "But they said he wasn't at his house, and that it looked like he'd packed." I believe he's what you call on the lam," Ronan said. Do you think he still has interest in you?" Gansey shook his head. "I don't know if he ever cared about me. I don't think he had a plan. He wanted the journal. He wants Glendower. But he doesn't know where Glendower is." "No one does," Gansey replied. "I have a colleague." Ronan sniggered when Gansey used the word colleague, but Gansey pressed on. "In the UK, who told me about the ritual that Welk used Noah for. It's possible he'll try it again in a different place, like Capeswater." "I think we should wake it up," Neve said. Again, everyone stared at her. She seemed unperturbed, a sea of calm, hands folded in front of her. "Excuse me?" Kala demanded. "I'm pretty sure I heard it involved a dead body." Neve cocked her head. "Not necessarily. A sacrifice isn't always death." Gansey looked dubious. Even assuming that is true, Cave's water is a bit of a strange place. What would the rest of the ley line be like if we woke it up? I'm not sure. I can tell you right now that it will be woken, though, Neve said. I don't even need my scrying bowl to see that. She turned on Persephone. Do you disagree? Persephone held her bug in front of her face, hiding her mouth. No, that's what I see as well. Someone will wake it in the next few days. And I do not think you want it to be Mr. Welk, Neve went on. Whoever wakes up the corpse road will be favored by the corpse road, both the one who sacrifices and the one who is sacrificed. Favored like Noah is favored? Blue interrupted. He doesn't seem very lucky. From what I've heard here, he was living a physical life in an apartment with these boys, Neve remarked. That seems far preferable to a traditional spirit's existence. I would count that as favorable. Gansey ran a pensive finger over his lower lip. He said, I'm not certain about this. Noah's favor is also tied to the ley line, isn't it? When his body was moved, he lost a lot of his presence. If one of us did the ritual, would we be tied to the ley line the same way, even if the sacrifice didn't invoke death? There's too much we don't know. It's more practical to stop Welk from performing the ritual. Again. We could just give the location of Cape's water to the police. No! Both Neve and Mora said it at once. Neve, however, won for overall impressiveness by pairing her outburst with leaping from her chair. I thought you went to Cape's water, she said. We did. Didn't you feel that place? Do you want it destroyed? How many people do you want tramping through it? Does it seem like a place that it can exist full of tourists? It's holy. What I'd like, Gansey said, is to neither send the police to Cape's water nor wake the ley line. I would like to find out more about Cave's water, and then I'd like to find Glendower. What about Welk? Mora asked. I don't know, he admitted. I just don't want to bother with him at all. Several exasperated faces turned on Gansey. Mora said, well, he's not going to just go away because you don't want to deal with him. I didn't say it was possible, Gansey replied, not looking up from his splint. I just said that it was what I would like. It was a naive answer, and he knew it. Gansey continued. I'm going back to Casewater. He took my journal, but I'm not letting him take Glendower, too. I'm not going to stop looking just because he's looking, too. And I'm going to fix Noah. Somehow. Blue looked at her mother, who was just watching, arms crossed, and she said, I'll help you. Chapter 36. We are 81% of the way through. And I think I'm gonna end it here. How are we feeling? Are you excited? Does this feel very penultimate and stressful? Making a plan. I'm stressed, but I already know what happened, so I'm like only stressed in the way that you can be when you're rewatching something and you're like, I know the things that happen and I know how the story goes. And it's a good story and it's well done and I know how everything ends in the end. And it's okay. But I'm still stressed because that's how the story feels to read or watch or just experience. I really like a big conversation between each of the main players of the story. I just love it whenever that happens. Especially if you like the characters. But it was tough to do all of their voices. I had to kind of give, change some things about Kala. And Neve and Persephone kind of sound a little too similar. But yeah. Next episode of Ishcast. Next episode, I'm going to read the rest of this book, and then I'm going to be like, now you've experienced it. And I'm probably gonna give some of my thoughts, but I'm not gonna be able to give all of my thoughts until I've actually read all 4 of them for you, just because that's, yep. Wow, can you believe it's been a month of this? Oh my. Oh my. Okay. This is the part where they knock me out. This is the part where they send me to... Yeah. Okay. Adios. I love you. TTYL. TTYLXOX. Okay. Calm down. Bye-bye. Bye.